All right, we're back. We are at COMP253. That's assets for game developers in the fall 2018 semester, and it's week 10, or yeah, less than 10, I guess it would be. And we're doing more hard surface modeling in Blender, and it's, of course, we're at Centennial. All right, so let's kick off our Blender stuff. I'm going to move to a different, well, actually, I'm not. I'm just going to kick this off. Hopefully this will be good enough for you guys. When my Blender finally starts. There we go. Dark mode. Yay. I'm going to switch back. I found that presenting, when I was looking at the video, presenting in dark mode is actually quite difficult. So I'm going to go back, not for me, but for what you can see in dark mode. So I'm going to switch back to kind of a lighter preset, only because I don't want you guys to not be able to see my stuff, right? So reset default theme. There we go. So here we are in Blender, and last time what we talked about is different ways of adding materials and textures, and that took the majority of the time. That's what we did mostly last week, right? So this time I want to talk about, ways of, creating tiles. So imagine, when we say tiles, what are they? I want to make a level. I want to create some level, assets. It doesn't matter whether, by the way, it's 2D or 3D. When we talk about tileable assets, they're things that can kind of stick together and they look like one continuous scene. So here's the challenge for today. Let's make a set of tiles to help you, and that's one of your this next assignment is. But it won't be like everything you need for your assignment. I'll add things, one thing at a time. First thing is, let's talk about some new tools. One of the tools we're going to be talking about today is how to do extrusion more. Okay, so we've talked about extrusion a little bit, I think, but we're going to talk about it more and what that is. Okay, so I've got a simple cube here. I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to subdivide my cube into a number of cuts. And now that we have our cube set up in a number of cuts, okay, all I've done is just separate it. You can watch this for a second before I go into detail. I'm going to press Control Tab and move into face select mode. And I've got these parts of my cube, right? So what I can do is I can right click and select one part of my cube, almost like one subdivision. And then if I was to just pull it out like this, you can see that it deforms the geometry. Okay, so this is geometry deformation. All right, so where things change. To note, this is without proportional editing. Okay, we haven't talked about proportional editing yet, but I want you to take a look at this. What it's doing. It's actually like literally, I'm dragging stuff out, and the quads are being preserved, right? So we have all these quads. However, I want to point out also that when you look at the thing, this is kind of a weird quad, isn't it? Look at this quad right here. So if I zoom in, look at this one here. Does that really make any sense, this one? Does this quad make any sense? So what do I mean by making any sense? But look at it. It's like almost like it needs a crease here. It needs like a crease or something, right? So you can certainly do this with Blender. But the problem here is that you don't have enough information for the program to draw, this particular, shape that we've drawn out, right? So one thing we can try and do is add things like additional geometry, like edges, around this quad, right? So again, we can if we press Control R, you can see that it's going to try and subdivide areas down here and here, but nothing around this area here. It doesn't know how to draw the edges. So I could press the K key and start doing cuts myself. So for example, let's say I want to do a cut from here to here to here. I can do that, and what that would do is give the computer more information about what I'm looking for. Okay, so again, you can see now that there is some more information, but it still looks weird, right? I mean, this one is just it's a wacky texture. It's basically a bent plane. I'm taking a plane, there's no geometry, and I'm doing one of these to it. And like I'm actually bending it in half. But there's no crease. There's no There's nothing that I know what to do with. And this would cause a real issue in terms of the way it would render, the way it would draw in things like Unity or Unreal or another program. It's really weird, right? Let me undo that change. So that's one option. The other one to do is you could draw a line from here to here and cut this in half, right? Again, you're going to get triangles here for a second, which is always a bad thing. Remember I talked about triangles bad, quads good, right? And this is for 3D modeling, okay? Not just for having fun and making a scene. So if I did this, how's this? Is this any better? And I think this gives enough information when I draw this line, that the model knows what to do with it. I mean, the shape. But here, look at compared this side to this side. So that's a problem. Okay. So one of the ways we can combat this is if we do things like with proportional editing. So on the bottom, there's this little button. And if you notice right on the bottom of the viewport, right here, right in the middle, there's this little thing that looks like this. If you click onto it, it says proportional editing. Okay, and there's different options. One is connected, the other one is projected, and the third one is enable. If we click enable, what enable does is it allows me to, when I edit, instead of it being pulled out so sharply, look what it does now. If I pull it out, I get this big, as I'm pulling, I get this, looks like a circle. Take a look at this circle, right? I can actually, so I'm actually dragging, like left click and dragging my cursor, right? At the same time, I'm without letting go, I'm moving the scroll wheel of my middle mouse so I can get more or less influence. Less influence, sharper, like we saw. More influence, rounder. So now we get some shapes that look like this. Okay, so look what we can get. So proportional editing is great for things like organic modeling, right? We want to have a curve, right, to the shape of what we're doing, and we're affecting a larger area. Even though I'm pulling only one face around, right, depending on how big my influence circle is, I can affect other faces around it to make it more or less effective. The bigger it is, you can see now that even the whole shape will stretch and squash, right? See that? The whole shape. The bigger it is, if it's the whole shape, or less, I can affect more or less area of my shape depending on how much I'm affecting, okay? So kind of a neat little effect. So that's definitely one thing we can do to alleviate some of these weird quads. Because if I do this, take a look at how the quads are, kind of aligned with the circle. So that's one thing you could do. You can do one of these, right? So kind of create a shape that looks like, a shape like this. So one good thing about this is they're all quads. They're all proportional, right? And, it's a very smooth looking thing. So if I go back into object mode, it looks like this, right? So you see that there's a bit of deformation on the top, but actually I've deformed more surface area than just one face. Okay, so if I go back now and if I undo, so I undo this change. And what if I had more than one face selected? So that's one face. But what if I had like a strip of faces, like one of these, right? So I have a strip of faces, make the whole center strip selected. This is what happens now if I do proportional editing. So again, I can press, I can try and put this out. And when I do that now, take a look at the influence this has. This is kind of interesting, right? And again, I can do more or less, influence by scrolling in and out. Try this out, guys, please. It's something that you should try out because I can make interesting shapes by just, using proportional editing. Things that you should be careful about is the following. Now, if I do this, take a look. If I do one of these, if I push too hard, then I'm going to get collapsing edges like this, right? Where I get Z fighting, right? Like right in here. So be careful when you do this kind of stuff. You can certainly do it. The program will allow it. Unless I do something like this and expand the entire thing, which actually pushes the whole cube down. So it's interesting. The more influence you have or you apply, the less the object will allow you to, stretch the thing and deform it so that it doesn't work. So this is pretty cool. So I can do one of these, and then I can, orbit around here, and you can see that what I've done, I've created this, real proportional issue because the way I've done my faces. Let me undo this change, and let's just create a different pattern of faces. I want to show you this because depending on the pattern of faces that you select, take a look at this now. So again, I'm using proportional editing and I'm pulling, but look what I get. I get this inner ridge, right? Where I get this separation. I can do this as well, right? So try this out. It's interesting, things you'll get, especially if you do something random like this, where you have some kind of weird thing. You'll get some weird effects, right? Take a look at that, where you have this things that go in and out. Proportional editing. The way to turn proportional editing on and off with shortcut key is the O key. So if I press the O key, I turn proportional editing off and on. So if I do this now, you can see now there's no more proportional editing, right? I turn the O key on again, and I get proportional editing again, right? So no proportional editing, O key, toggle off, toggle on, right? So I get proportional. This is kind of interesting, this thing. So that can also help you with modeling. But where I think one of the most interesting and valuable tools is the extrude tool. Okay, take a look now. So I've got these faces selected, and I press the E key for extrude, E. And when I press E for extrude, what I get is something that looks like this, where actually it is creating additional geometry alongside everything that I'm pulling up. So let me undo that change. And I'll do it again. So when I press extrude, it does a couple things. One, it duplicates the geometry that's in the top of the shapes you've selected. So here, I actually have additional vertices that it's created that hang on top of the original vertices, right? And so it's created new volumes. When I pull this out now, it's stretching the vertices away from the original ones to create these shapes. So if I do something like this and left click to select, then I can get a shape that looks somewhat like this, like a tower, right? So here's a tower. You can see still that I have some influence over what I did before. This is without proportional editing turned on. If I do the same thing, so if I select some faces in the middle, let's say, turn proportional editing on and press extrude, now I get some weird, warpy effect, and you'll see how that works. So like, for example, I do one of these, and I can literally, because proportional editing is on, I've got the extrude thing happening. So here's proportional editing on, enable. And if I do this now, you can see that I can still extrude and do proportional editing, kind of have that thing at the same time. Let me just go back and undo to show you what I'm talking about. So here, I selected everything. My proportional editing is enabled, and I'm also extruding. So extrude. Okay, so there's my extrusion. I can't, when I'm extruding, proportional editing doesn't take hold. But as soon as I do one of these, you can see that I can still influence the entire shape or whatever that I'm doing. What about when you're extruding at an angle like this? So let's say, for example, I modify my object like this, and now I press these. I want to extrude these faces. What happens to these faces? So I say these faces I want to extrude, and I press E. Look what they do. They go at this angle, almost like to the normal. Look, they don't go straight up and down. Even though if I press Z, right? So I want to press Z. I can press Z, and I can make them go up like this, right? However, I can also press other buttons. So E and then on the X-axis to make it go this way, right? I can press on the Y-axis if I want to make it go side to side. That's kind of a weird thing, though. It doesn't really look out. I can also press escape. But if I just press, if I just pull this out this way, now because proportional editing is taking hold, I get this situation where I actually pull things around. I stretch them and squash them, right? If I turn proportional editing off, I press the O button and press this thing here, I still pull up here. I still have extra geometry here. And that's dangerous. When you press E, you add additional vertices. So I got these vertices that are on top of vertices, and you can't see them. They're duplicates, and they're sitting in the same plane, almost like coplanar or, if you will, vertices that are on the same exact spot, right? Be very careful because you'll have extra geometry, and your computer program won't know how to deal with it sometimes. It'll cause anomalies. Again, if I press extrude here, it's going to go into the at the normal. That's what the default is. So it's going to the normal, right? Here's something to note where you can control this stuff. On the bottom, notice down here where it says global. This is the global coordinate system, right? And this modifies this part here, like my little gizmo, right? Or my manipulator arms. If I change from global to normal, right? Now what's happening is I have my manipulator arm, and my manipulator arm is actually pointing to the normal, which is interesting. An interesting way of, let me just zoom in there, of manipulating things. So now when I do this, it goes to the normal, right? As opposed to if I go back to global, it goes straight up and down, right? That doesn't make any sense. Sometimes we want to go to the normal. So we want to change this coordinate space transform to normal. The normal stuff, right? Also, notice we can also do other ones. Local. Here's local. So local, it takes a look at the normal, the coordinate system in the local coordinate space. So this is interesting. So again, I can do one of these, and I can do one of those. But you see that this is totally changed up. The other one is gimbal. All right, so here's gimbal. And that doesn't seem to be much different. And there's also another one called view. All right, so there's view. So take a look at this now. No matter where I turn my view, I always have my arrows in the same spot. Take a look, guys, please. Take a look up here. This is something that'll help you model. That's what I'm showing you this, right? Look, no matter where I am, because I've changed my coordinate space to view, my manipulator arms are pointing where I'm looking. So now I can go straight up. If I look over here, now I can go straight up this way. And when I'm looking over here, or if I change my, I tumble a little bit more with my view, you know, so I do something different, like something like this. Now I can go, you know, over here. It's almost like a two-dimensional way of modifying my my object by looking at my view, as opposed to you know, using some other way of the deformation. Especially if I extrude. If I extrude this way, and then I can you know, press it across the z-axis as an example, or the x-axis. That x-axis according to my what I've done with my editing, right? One way to know that there's extra coordinates or extra vertices is these little, I'm in face select mode. Take a look. I've got these extra little faces here in the corners. That tells you that there's a face that's been collapsed, one on top of the other one. And we're going to have Z fighting. All right, so that's interesting. Let's go back to global. So global is interesting, but I find that it's much more useful to use normal on the normal space, which means pointing away from the face. So this way I can do one of these. I can kind of point in the direction of my face. When it comes to making what we're doing today with tiling, if I want to make a tunnel, all right, and let's start a new project to show you what I'm talking about. I want to make a tunnel, let's suppose, right? And I want to start with a cube. Look, guys. So I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm not going to subdivide it. I'm just going to use one face of the tunnel. Okay, so we're just going to use this. So deselect all. I'm going to go into face select mode and select just one face. There's my face, right? All right, I want to extrude, right? I want to extrude. And then I also, when you extrude, you can also do things like rotate, scale, all that stuff as well. So watch, if I go extrude, here's my extrusion. Take a look, right? So I'm extruding the tunnel this way, let's suppose. And now, after I extrude the tunnel, I want to rotate this face. I can do that. If I press rotate, right? And if I specify an axis across the z-axis as an example, and if I'm careful enough, I can do something that looks like this. Good. So I've got this almost like what looks like a bit. There's a bit of my tunnel. There's a bit of things. Now I want to go this way, right? I want to extrude this way. If I extrude, you know, it'll take me in that direction, right? So I can go here. As an example, I can rotate across the z-axis, right? I can extrude again, right? I can rotate across the z-axis, right? So again, I can extrude again, right? And I can rotate across the z-axis, and I can extrude again, and so on. And you can see that. So you can see that when you do that stuff, even if I extrude more, when you do that stuff, you can create whatever effect you want by, you know, kind of creating this tunnel that you're going through. So you see, like, you can make almost like a tunnel, right? Now, it doesn't look like a tunnel. It looks like a cube that's been stretched. But can you imagine if I get rid of this face? Watch. So here's my face. I can press X to delete faces. So now I get rid of this face. Look, now I can see the tunnel. And I choose this face. Let's just zoom in here. And I press X to delete this face. And now I have some kind of geometry that I can use to traverse. However, remember what we have a problem with right now. The problem that we're going to have in here is these are the normals when we make faces are on the outside, right? The normals are not on the inside, which means the way it'll draw everything will be only on the outside of the tunnel, not on the inside. So it becomes a challenge, right, when we do this kind of work. What I mean by that, if we actually render what this is going to look like, and if I go to the camera view, so here's my camera view, right? And let's just align my camera to view. So remember how to do that? We went to view, right? And then I went to camera, and then, I want to, align view, and then align active camera to view. And if I did that, you can see that the camera is centered around my view. I can also go into my numeric select mode on the right, and I can select lock camera to view, which is right here. We talked about this last time. Under the views options, you can go to lock camera to view. And then what I can do, once I lock camera to view, I can literally scroll in, or when I move my view, my camera actually moves as well, right? So I can actually align my camera to look inside the scene. Okay, great. So let me uncheck that, make it bigger. And when if I render this scene with lights and everything else, so let's go back to my regular view. This is my regular view. And if I go to my material view, this is my material view. You can see that I can see some geometry inside here. And the problem is, though, that the stuff inside will not have any kind of texture. If I was going to apply texture to the outside or whatever, the stuff on the inside is not going to be working because the normals are on the outside. They point outside of my my object, and I'm not going to have any geometry that's painted on the inside. So I could do things like select all with the A key. I'm in edit mode, and I could go to flip normals. So if I go in here and if I go to mesh, and if you look at normals, I can go to flip normals. And when I do that, now the normals are pointing to the inside, right? So the inside of my tunnel here, right? I've got normal faces that are pointing inside where I can apply color information and material and all that stuff. So to really exemplify this, to show you what I'm talking about, let us turn on back face culling. So on the bottom, if I go back down here, where it says shading, there's an area that says back face culling. If I turn this on, it's going to look kind of weird, right? It's going to look like this. I can see the tunnel inside, but I don't see the walls from the outside because this side of the wall is going to be culled. It will not be drawn. Only the stuff on the inside is going to be drawn. Okay? And again, this is a technique that we use to reduce cycles, to reduce computational information. It's pretty dark in here. And if I wanted to add lights inside this object, I can do that. So I can suggest places to add lights. I can position my three-dimensional cursor, as an example, in a spot inside the tunnel, right? And then I can press Shift-A to add a lamp. So let's try that again. Let's do it in object mode, actually. So if I press Shift-A and I want to add a lamp, here's my lamp. And if I say, let's make it a point lamp, then you can see that the inside of this tunnel is now has a lamp. So even though I'm in object mode, right? I'm in object mode. I can see that the tunnel has some light. And if I press Shift-D to duplicate that, I can continue to run lights throughout the tunnel to make the whole tunnel lit. Okay, and I mean that not in it's lit like it's cool, but actually it's like lit, like I'm lighting up the tunnel. There we go. And I can put these lamps wherever I want inside my scene, right? There, I've lit the tunnel up, and I've got these lights. You can see that when I'm in the tunnel itself, I can see the lamps where the light is, right? Now, there's nothing associated with this lamp, but I get this reflective quality inside my tunnel because of my material. So if I look at my material for this particular object, so if I click on the object itself, and I go to the Material tab on the right, here's the Material tab, you can see that I have some specular qualities attached to my material. I can turn these specular qualities off. So now there's no reflections. See that? Reflection, really reflective, no reflection. Whenever you apply a material, I recommend turning specularity right down if you're going to use Blender Render. And that way you can use specularity for the material itself. All right, so there's what I'm seeing. And let's turn backface culling back off. And so you can see what it looks like. On the outside, it looks like it's just a basic cube that's been stretched, almost like a cylinder. On the inside, I've got this additional information, right? Because I've flipped my normals. My normals are pointing inside the cube, not outside the cube. The outside part is just a container. That's all it is. Okay? So we're talking about light, and we've talked about this stuff. I want to unwrap. We talked about stuff last time about, having a, this cubic space. And one thing we did was we took a cobble texture and we unwrapped it on the ground. Remember that? That was one of the things we did. The last thing we did last week, right? But what about if I wanted to wrap these walls? How do I do that? Remember, if I wanted to apply, and this is a question for you guys. So question, if I want to apply a different texture to different parts of my cube, how do I do that? How did you guys do it for the spaceship? What did you guys do to apply different textures to the spaceship last week? Do you remember?
You go in and yeah.
Which one?
You select the area, and then you go in and you choose the texture and you click apply it.
Okay, I could do this. Basically, what you're doing is I'm having a material, and depending on each of these faces, so if I go back into, I'm in object mode. Let's go to edit mode. So I can select any face I want, right? So here's my faces that I want. And each of these faces, I can assign a different material. So let's suppose I want to make, I want to have different textures. I want to have a texture up here that is, I don't know, some kind of concrete. And let's say the top is also concrete, but the floor is cobblestone. I don't know, it's kind of weird, right? Almost like a cobblestone pathway that's also squarish, or a cubic pathway, right? So one thing is I can make a material called walls. Let's make the material called walls. And my walls material, again, this with a silly extrusion, right, is going to be representing the most of my object. But let's just change this the floor of my tunnel here to have a different material. So walls, one material, let's make another, and let's color it to give us a reference. So the walls, we're going to apply a color that's green, okay, just to give us a reference of where the walls are. So not because the color is going to be green, but the walls are going to be green, just so that we see where the walls are. Almost like I'm highlighting that when I block out my scene, where the wall material is going to be. Okay, let's add another material. And the other material we're going to make is the floor or the ground. So I'm going to kind of make this material, click new. And then inside here, we're going to call it the ground material. Okay, there's the ground material. And let's change the color. We'll change the specularity down to 0. And we'll change the color of the material so that it's like brown or something. So we'll make it something like brown, like a light brown color or a beige, if you will. And then what we want to do is I want to hide. Let's try this for now. How do I hide certain things? Do you guys remember how to do that? I want to hide faces. How do I hide faces? You guys remember how to hide faces? I'm not going to delete them. H. So I select the faces on the ceiling, the roof, and I want to hide all of these faces by pressing H. Now I see the inside of my tunnel, all right? What I can do is I can select the floor a little easier this way, right? By just selecting the floor faces. Here's my floor faces, right? Those are my floor faces. And I want to assign the ground material. So I'm going to click Material and click Assign. And now you can see that I have two different materials, right? One material for the walls and another one for the ground, if that makes sense. And if I want to bring back my faces that I've removed, well, how do I do that? How do I bring back my faces that I've hidden? Do you guys remember that? Alt-H. Very good. Alt-H brings them all back, right? So it kind of just responds. Also notice on the right, you can do this all through the from object perspective. I can do the same thing from an object perspective, an object view here on the right. Okay, so I got a couple of things that are lit. If I was to render everything now, let's go into render mode. So I'm going to go into rendered. You can see what it's going to do. I've got this object, and inside the object is lit on the inside, but not really on the outside. The only object lighting we have on the outside is the point lamp we have in our scene. So if I go back out to object mode and I get rid of the original point lamp, which is out here, this original lamp, it says lamp. So if I just get rid of it by pressing X or delete, right? So I delete it. Now you can see that nothing is lit except for the stuff that's on the inside, right? So my scene will be completely dark on the outside, but it'll be lit on the inside. That's what it should kind of look like this. So if I go back to material view, right? It's my material shader. I don't have a lamp anymore over here. It's fairly dark. The only lamps that exist are in here. And it's almost like I can walk through the scene, kind of, right? All right, so that's the way I mark. So all I'm doing here is marking where I'm going to put my textures. Okay, I want to apply the cobble texture that we had from last week. I put it up on Slack. I want to apply it to the floors again. So remember what we did. In order for us to apply the texture, we have to unwrap the UVs, right? So one thing is we want to do here is let's unwrap everything in our scene. So I'm going to press going to edit mode here for the object, right? I'm going to press A to select all. So this is in edit mode. I've selected the entire object. And I'm going to press U for unwrap. Now there's other options for unwrapping. Right now all I want you to do is unwrap. I click the unwrap button. What this does is it creates something called a UV map. UV map, right? So the object has been unwrapped. However, we can't visualize what this unwrapping looks like. Let's see if we can shift views to do that. So I want you to go up here. We haven't done this really too much, but go up here to the top where we have this default view. Take a look, guys. I want to see your eyes up here because you're going to miss it. Philip, up here. Click this, and then move to UV editing mode. Choose this one. What this is going to do is show you a little scene on the right, 3D, as well as something that looks wacky on the left. Okay, this is what our UV map looks like right now. Does this look right? No, right? Take a look. If I anything that's highlighted here will appear over here. So let's just look at the floor tile. So the floor tile is like this. That's what our UV map looks like. It's all skewed and weird, right? If I unwrap that UV map again, so I choose this and unwrap it, I get a floor tile that looks like square, which is what I want. I want all squares to come up here. I don't want that other funky thing that looks like this. That's what the floor tile looked like right now. That's what it would, be positioned like. And if I highlight everything, if I press kind of Control A and then press unwrap again, I still get this really funky shape. Now, I want you to think the UV map is like literally when I unwrap, I take the material and open it up, almost like I take a box and I cut it into pieces and open it up. I literally unwrap the box. And what a box looks like, do you guys know what a box looks like unwrapped? It looks like a T. So let's take a look at an unwrapped or kind of a box. So we'll say unwrapped box. So if you can actually see, hopefully we'll see what it looks like, or a box shape. This is what I'm talking about. This is an unwrapped box. So the box unwraps all the 6 faces. For example, this is a crate, and each of the faces of the crate are flat. It's not in 3 dimensions. It's 2 dimensions. And so because we're in 2 dimensions, we have X and Y coordinates, right? Like before, right? But there's no Z coordinate. However, we don't call them X and Y coordinates. We call them UV. U for X, V for Y. That's all it is, okay? So when we talk about a UV map, we're talking about a mapping of the image that's going to go onto each of the faces of our object. So I have an image, and I want to take parts of this image and paint it on my object, wherever the material is. I've selected some coordinate space for my material, right, based on my object. And each of the faces, I want them to pertain to or relate to each of the faces that's on the cube somehow. All right, let's go back to this again. Does this look like a cube to you? Right? That looks like weird, wacky stuff, right? However, if you notice, what we did was, when we actually unwrapped each of one of these things by themselves, it became a cube. Let me show you this. So if I do deselect all, and if I choose, let's actually choose the top part, I can kind of use the same controls I have normally done. One thing to note is I can look through this thing because I actually have this option here, which is limit selection to visible on, and I can turn that off again so I can see it like this. So if I go here and if I select these top faces again, just like we did last time, and notice what it gives me here. And if in my top faces, if I hide them, so I press the H key, now I can see the path again, right? Now here's something. If I was to select the path, take a look at what the UV map looks like on the left. It's terrible, right? If I select the entire path, here's my entire path, right? And I press unwrap again here in this view, I get something that looks like this. This makes more sense to me. Look. However, I get some stretching. Look at this one. This is all stretched out. Look. That's not right, is it? Well, actually, it is. I got these two longer faces here, right? I got two big faces, and I've got some smaller faces. So what this does is it will warp your geometry, the geometry of the cobblestone, to make it go. Okay? So the more of this map, this is actually proportionate to this. Now, this is pretty good. You know why it's pretty good? It's all flat. Here's something you can do too when I look at this view. I can press G for move, and I can move this stuff, my actual UV, around in this little place here. I can also, if I press escape, I can also press the S key to scale what I'm seeing here on the UV side, the UV coordinates, so that they're different than the size of what I'm looking at here. All right, so that's one thing to note. So UVs, think about these on the left as islands. Islands that I've selected here on the right. So on the right side, I have, my space, my three-dimensional space with my path. And on the left, what I've done is I've selected my UVs, right? My texture coordinates, that's what they are, for that path on the left, right? That shows me the islands. These islands should be flat as possible. If they're not flat or they're warped, right? What's going to happen is you're going to get a skewing of the texture. The texture is going to be skewed, just like if I took a picture of you and I did this. If I took the edges of the picture and did one of these, right? It's going to be all, warped out of control, right? Okay, cool. So this is part of what we do when we do UV mapping. Now I want to use this cobblestone texture. Let's go back to the default view. So if I go back to default view, I'm back into this view. Okay, so UV editing allows me to look at UVs. I can still do different things here. All right, and notice that on the ground I have this material, but my material doesn't have a texture. I need to add a texture. So let's add a texture to the material. Remember, a texture is just another property of the material. The material is a container. It contains the diffuse node, the channel that gives me some kind of color. It gives me the specular channel, which gives me some kind of shininess and other things. Plus, it also gives me a property or a slot, if you will, for my texture, a bunch of texture slots. Let's add a new texture slot, and we're going to call this one the ground texture. We can call it the same as the material. And I want to load my ground texture, right? Remember we did this last time. I want to scroll down, and you can see that there is new and open. I want to click open, right? I can choose the texture that I have somewhere. So let's use my desktop. And maybe I have my gravel cobble texture on my desktop. If you don't have it, you can download it from Slack. Click my cobble, and I press open. Now I have my texture. Take a look. And what's happened is because I have made my UV map the way it is, it looks like my cobblestone texture is going through the entire path, but not on the walls. The walls have a different material, and so the texture that I would have applied, only pertains to the material that the texture is part of. My texture belongs to the ground material. So therefore, that's where it's going to be applied, nowhere else. Okay. Now let's take it back into the UV editing view, okay, for a second. And if I was to go here, oh man, how come it's not showing? One is because the shader on the right, it has to be set to material, so I can actually see the material. There we go. So I can see the material. This thing down here has to be set to material. All right, cool, but that's really big. Look at that. That doesn't look right. On the left, I want some help. And what I can do here is, if you go down to the bottom where it says, next to where it says UVs, if I choose this little image here, I can actually, select my gravel cobble texture. And then it takes up this big space. If I zoom out like this, you can see that the texture is being to apply. All I did was zoom in and out, okay? I zoomed out, and I can see that the texture is being applied to the exact locations of my UVs, my UV islands, right? Here's where they are. Now, if I wanted to make it so that these cobblestones appeared smaller, I can just scale my UVs. Watch. If I scale my UVs, if I make it bigger, then the cobblestones become smaller, really small, in fact, and they start repeating. You can see that. So let's make it so that it makes more sense. So I'm going to kind of do one of these. Let's escape and try that again. So I can make it so that I can proportionally change the size of my cobblestones or the look of my cobblestones by moving up my UV islands. And once I've done that, let's say I selected that and I can scroll out, you can see that my UV islands are bigger than the texture. So what's really happening is this texture that I've downloaded, because it's tileable, is going to tile itself in the other spaces, right? And add additional textures above and around. For example, what about over here, right? I don't have this texture over here. What it's going to do is it's going to take this part and repaint it on this side. And how about over here? Well, it's going to take this part, the bottom, and repaint it on this one, because you can almost think about this as a bunch of tiles everywhere. And it's going to just repeat over and over again. And the reason why this is a great texture is it's tileable, which means the actual image itself, take a look, on the top and on the bottom, they match. So this looks like it can continue. And so how about this? On the left and on the right, you can see that there's a stone that would match so that they kind of click together. They fit together. That's why it's called a tileable texture. Okay? So that you can see that there's a path here. If I go back to my default view, you can see that the path is nice. It looks like it's a nice little path. It makes sense. It's a little bit more reasonable. The stones are not so big. They're more reasonably sized. Yeah? Okay. All right. So that's kind of the first thing we've done. We have a material called ground, right? So again, I've got the ground material. Here's the ground material, and it gives us a bit of a preview. Look over here. It gives a preview of what the material would look like along with the texture, right? Texture, I want you to think about it. I know it's kind of weird and it's non-intuitive. We think of what texture is something we can touch, right, in real life. But when it comes to 3D art, texture and CG, computer graphics, texture means image. Texture means a bitmap image, typically, right, with pixels. And what we want to do is we want to get a texture map. That's what we're doing. We have a texture map, a coordinate space of where all the pictures of this image are. And what we're doing is we're taking a sample of the image map and remapping those pixels on top of the material that we have described or created. That's what's actually happening. It's a one-to-one mapping. So I have an image map, which is flat, and I'm saying, okay, get this pixel and put it over here. This pixel, put it over here. This pixel, put it over here. And it's copying or duplicating that pixel in different spaces. That's what's happening, okay? Now these cobblestones that are being used here, so these are all the cobblestones that we're seeing. What's actually happening is they're completely flat. And so if I was to walk a guy through this a three-dimensional character inside these cobblestones, the challenge that I would have is that these cobblestones would look like a picture. And so we add something called a normal map. And a normal map, what it does is it uses light and dark values of the image, and it fools the geometry. It fools your eye to think that there is actually more geometry than there is. It gives you the illusion of depth with no depth. It's kind of weird, right? So we don't have a normal map, though, for these images. These images are just images. Now, there are some applications we can use, right? That's what we can do. We can use some applications to create normal maps for us. One of them is something called, if I'm not wrong, X-normal. So let's go out and see if we can find X-normal. So X-normal. And what X-normal does is it creates a bunch of, so here's our version. We can download X-normal. And if I look at what normal maps look like, here, let's take a look at, not videos, but images. Let's take a look at images. So here is an example of a normal map. Here. That's what a normal map looks like. It's got this purplish, view to it with some areas that are brighter and areas that are darker. Take a look, right? It looks really weird, right? But this, what's that? Yeah, so these normal maps, what they do is they tell the computer, right, your computer program, the 3D application, where to mimic or modify the pixels to give them the feel and the illusion of depth when there's no depth, right? It's interesting. And this is really, really important how to do. So if I was going to go and do this, I want to convert my cobblestone texture to a normal map. Let's do that. Now, there's going to be some challenges here, and we'll talk about the challenges in a second. Okay, but let's do that. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to say, I want to get X-normal. So we're going to go back to X-normal. Here it is. And now, I don't know if I have it already. X-normal. I do. So here's X-normal. This is what it looks like. I probably have an earlier version than this one, and it says the entry point, blah, blah, blah. I might have to re-download this thing. But this is what it looks like. And it says that I have, high definition meshes, low definition meshes, and I can generate, it's almost like a normal map generator. That's what it kind of does, right? And so what I want to try and do is I want to load up a mesh that I have. So I want to click on high definition meshes. And what I want to do is I want to load up this map. Let me just do that for a second. And let's clear all meshes, making that they're visible. There's no meshes that are applied right now. I think it might be a drag and drop interface as well. Let's do that. So if I take my texture, and if I do one of these, is that how it works? It does. Yeah. Look, there's my gravel cobble texture. Base texture is a tangent space normal map. I would click that. I'm not going to do that. But that's a texture. This is my, my option. If I click Generate Map, so I want to specify a file name for output. Sorry. So let's go to Settings and Examples. So here's my save settings. I want to go to, this is my settings XML file. I meant to go to, those are height to normal, photo to normal. That's what I want. And if I grab that photo lit, top lit, bright lit, normal map, that's what it looks like. And if I use the luminance, hold on a second here. I believe I have to specify where the stuff is. Here's my 3D viewer. I don't have my low poly mesh. I want to do, oh yeah, this is, I can actually load my low poly mesh. Here's my option file. So my output file is where it's going to go. So I'm going to specify that my output file is going to go on the desktop as well. Here's my desktop. My file name is going to be gravel cobble. And I usually put for normal, I put an N in there. So gravel cobble _N. right, will be the name of my normal map, right? And of course, .jpeg, because that's what it is, right? And then I'm going to click Save. So that's where my object is going to go. It specifies the size of my normal map, 512 by 512. I can change this. And the way to know which the proper size is, if I look at my original file, I'm just going to take it into Fireworks here, any graphic manipulation program. What you want to do is look at the original file. My original file is 1024 by 1024. That is actually how big it is. And so what I want to do is I want to match the normal map size to that as well. So I'm going to go 1024 by 1024, right? Edge padding, if I want to put an edge padding, bucket size, these are all the different options. I want to create a normal map, right? I can also make a height map. I can also make an ambient occlusion map. We're not going to do that right now, but only a normal map is what I want. And I'm just going to use the default renderer, and I'm going to click on, go back to my high definition map here, this one right here, generate maps. And it can't find a plugin for my thing. That's not good. I think I might have to re-download this thing, because it works like, literally that's all you have to do. All right, so let's just do this one more time. Yeah. Sorry, it's been a while. There's other tools. I'm just going to use this. I'm showing you this one because it's one of the most popular tools out there. Let's just grab the latest tool. And it's for Windows 10. That would be nice if we had Windows 10. And then we get the download link and click here to start my download. And I'll put it inside my downloads. There it is, and save. And then hopefully we can run this. It doesn't take long. It's quite small. It's about 81 megs. But the great thing about this is it creates additional information based on the images you give it. And then we can use the normal map. We can bring that normal map into Blender in addition to the texture map to give information about how the material is going to look. Now, while I'm waiting, why don't we go into Blender and see what I'm talking about? So if I go back into Blender, then we did this last week briefly. I went into the texture, and if I scroll down here, there's an area that says, right in here, take a look, guys. So there's an area that says geometry. And if I turn on normal, it looks like it's pretty rough, right? And that's way too rough. What it's doing is it's generating a normal map. That's what it's doing, right? Undo that. It's generating a normal map based on the information that it has from the picture. This is the normal map, right? So what I can do is I can change the influence of the normal map over here. And I recommend something like 0.15, like really small, even smaller than that. So like something like, 0.15. And if you notice now, you have some influence from the normal map, but it's not so crazy. So it looks realistic, but it's not insane. Okay, that's what this thing looks like. Now, this is something that's happening in Blender. It's actually kind of calculating this stuff. And notice that it says, from a mapping perspective, we can use a UV map, right? Because this is what this does, right? So how do I include normal maps in here as well, right? Because that's what we need to do. We have to have two images. One image for the texture and the other one for the normal map, okay? And that's what we need to do. Let's go back to XNormal and see if we can generate this thing. So here's XNormal, and let me just to make sure that XNormal is not already running. I'm just going to install XNormal here. Again, it's just a little tool to convert an image to a normal map. Hopefully, it'll just be able to do that without a plugin. And if not, then, well, we're going to have to do something different. All right, sure, let's install it. Now, great thing is we did this in Unity, and we brought it into Unity. Unity generated the normal maps for us, actually created the extra file. I'm not sure if you remember that, right? Whenever we bring in an image, I can use Unity for this too. It's a kind of a hack, is what I like to call it, where you bring stuff into Unity, and then Unity does all the work for you. But it's better to do it ahead of time, to have the normal map kind of generated for you. All right, so here we go. This is the XNormal. It's been installed. Let's see if we can actually run this craziness, and will it work? So if I press on XNormal, there it is. XNormal is here. Hopefully it will run now. And no, Yeah, I'm not happy with that. That DLL thing, it means that I'm missing something. That's not a happy thing for me. Sorry. So we're not going to use it. I'll have to get another program for you guys to do this kind of work. Was that? Oh, an online work. Convert normal to image to normal. Let's try that. Sure. Let's look it up. So we'll say convert image texture to normal. Yeah. Here's normal map online. There we go. All right. Click or drag and drop. Okay, let's do this. So we'll do the click or drag and drop thing. So we have our cobbled texture, which is right here, and we'll just do one of these. We want to drag and drop. That's cool. All right, so this is what it looks like. This is what I wanted. That's good. Thank you for that. And let's just put this onto Slack for us. So we'll go into our Slack channel, which is not open right now. Where the heck is Slack? I thought I had it open. It is open. Here's Slack. We'll go into this one, and we'll put in on our Slack channel the link, so you guys all have the same link, so we don't have to go too crazy. So there's a general map generator. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, cool. So we've got this, but this is too hard. The influence here is too great. Remember we talked about this? It has to be way less strong, the influence. And if you kind of reduce this to the left, hopefully it will reduce the influence of the normal map on the right. So see the right? This is really harsh, too much. If I turn it up high, and here's the left. If I turn it down, I want a little bit of influence. So it looks a little bumpy, but not too crazy. And I'm putting it around, like I said, around 0.15. There it is, this 0.15. Here's the level, right? And there's also blur and sharpness and stuff that I can use. And this is the filter. This is a Sobel filter. There's different kinds of filters you can use to create this thing. It's kind of neat. We can use different objects, it looks like. It looks like there's a plane. We can also use a sphere. A sphere is actually pretty cool because you can see what the thing would look like on the right. This is pretty cool. All right, cool. I want to download this thing as a PNG. Let's see if we can do this. I'm going to click on download. And we'll put it on the desktop. So here's my desktop. And we'll click save. Right, so here's my normal map.png. Right? And it's 1024 by 1024, the same size as my image. Right? So let's see if I can find that normal map now somewhere on my desktop. There it is. And I have two files. One it's called gravel cobble, and the other one that's normal map. Let's change gravel cobble normal map to gravel cobble _n for normal map. So I know what the normal map is. There's my normal map now. Okay, so how do I apply? Now I need these two things for Unity. I can't have just one image. The normal map is created from the image. And if you go back to this, you can see that this is the original image, and I can't really zoom in here. You can try for yourself. But it looks like there's additional information for the normal map here. The really cool thing is it can also create a displacement map, right? As well as an ambient occlusion map and a specular map. All these three things are really, really cool, or four things, to add additional information that is layers on your image. That's what it's doing. Okay, but how do I apply this to Blender? So what do you think? How would I do this? Would it be another material? No. You have the material information here, right? So we see that we want to bundle this thing together. Here's our color space is RGB, right? We have our image mapping. Right now it's a repeat. That's the way the image is mapped. I can also choose to do different kinds of checker pattern or whatever. That's this. From a mapping perspective, I can also go normal, and you can see that this normal map is flat. So that's something that's weird. I have a normal map. I can choose normal, but I don't have a normal here. I don't have a normal image. I only have this one. I only have, instead of coordinates for, my UV coordinates is all I have, right? So that's my UV map, right? But how do I do my normal map, right? So that's interesting. So, I mean, I don't have a thing loaded, right? So I'd like to load I have to load it in somehow, my normal map. Okay, that's one thing I have to do. Let's see if there's available something inside of my UV editing space. My UV editing space, sorry, UV editing space. My UV editing space shows this, right? And whatever I highlight, it shows what that is, but it really doesn't show anything else down here. Okay, so one thing is this UV editing space, but it also allows me to see all the objects here. Okay, so that's one thing it does. I can also go to image and I can open different images. So let's say if I go to this open image option, so I can open an image. I can go to my normal map, which is my gravel cobble N, and press open image. Okay, so there's my normal map. And the normal map image shows where the normal map is going to be. Whatever image I show here, whether it's this one or whether it's this one, it shows up. Okay, so this is a good thing. But this is a UV map, not a normal map. Now that I've loaded the image, and by the way, notice it says that I can pack the image here. See this little square? I can pack it so that the image belongs with my blend file. If I go back to the gravel cobble, I notice that's there already. I can see that the normal map is there already. Here's the normal map. But I want to use this normal map when I want to look at my image. So how do I go and do that? So if I go back to default view, right here, you can see that I'm looking at my gravel cobble object. I can also look at my normal map, right? And then, of course, it's not a UV anymore. It's a normal map, right? That's one thing I can look at it. The projection is definitely flat, okay? And I see that there's color and normal. Color and normal. And so if I turn the color off, you can see that that color goes away and so on. So that really doesn't seem to do anything. It doesn't seem to do what I wanted. I'm actually looking at the normal map here. You can see that this is the texture and here's the color. I'm looking at the gravel cobble normal because the underscore N, but I really don't see it. And I want to be able to see my normal map. I'm going to go back to my gravel cobble texture and look at, instead of normal, my coordinate space is going to be UV. So how do you think I can do it? What's your suggestion? New texture slot, right? So if you go back up to the top where I have ground, here's my ground, right? Could I add a new texture slot? You know, so I'm going to go click. And now notice it says here on the left, I have ground as my texture and this other thing called text. Forget text. I want to click this new button, okay? And in the texture, I can choose an object that I already have. Here's an image or movie, right? Notice I can also choose other things instead of an image or movie here, right? So it's an image or movie that I want to load. And I can choose new. I can make my own. I can choose open, or I can choose something that I already have, which is this. Now you can see that I have this coordinate space. Take a look at that. I have my texture map in here, right? So I have both this and this. Now, how will this thing look when it's textured? And does it matter which is the order? Like if I put this up here, do I have both? And if you notice here, if I take away the influence of my original texture, so I'm looking now at the texture, the ground texture. The ground texture right now by default has normal on. I can take that influence away. There's my influence gone. And what about this normal map here? There's my normal map. Let's uncheck this so I can see it. What is the influence that I have down here? I have color, right? Here's my color. If I take the color away, I can't see the normal map anymore. So the normal map gets loaded and I can see it as an image. And if I kept this like this, with this unchecked, you know, the ground, this bottom one seems to be the one I can see. Okay. I don't want to use, so a couple things. This texture looks like a UV, and this isn't what I want. I don't want a UV. It has to be a normal, right? But it's flat. It says it's flat. The coordinate space is a normal map, right? And the projection is flat. I can also make a tube, a cube, or whatever. The coordinates are the exact same. Doesn't matter whether I turn this on or not, or this on or not, or this on or not. That's not going to be the influence. Here's my color. I need to turn the color back on. And here's the blend. Now, this is really important. Blend is if I want to mix one to the other. Like I want to mix this color, as an example for this particular object, okay? And because I can have a bunch of layers, a bunch of images that layer one on top of the other, right? So now I want this normal map to be applied to this ground image. I want you to layer them together, but they have to know what to do. Okay. So anyone have any kind of inkling or idea what you could possibly do with these two? I've got two images, and I want to kind of, one is going to influence the other. It can't be a mix. It can't be like one image can't mix in with the other one. That's not really going to do it, I don't think, right? But what would be the way to do it? To give myself some kind of geometry, the look and feel of additional geometry here, because you can't really see it. Any idea, Philip? I want to add the normal map here on my texture. How do I do it? You guys know? So color space sRGB, I can use, so back up here, I'm on my normal map. I can say use alpha or not, right? I can choose to use alpha or not. What else do I have? Here's my additional fields. I have image sampling, right? Normal map, right? And it says tangent space. That's what it is. Here's my tangent space as an example. And it says alpha use, calculate normals, right? I can flip axes if I want, and so on. I believe this is all I have to do. If I go back to UVs, I think I may have to expand the normal. I think I may have to unwrap this thing as well. No, but it's already unwrapped. Okay, we're going to have to Google it. I can't remember how. Sorry, guys. It's been a while. I usually do it in other programs. So apply normal map Blender. There you go. It's probably just going to tell me a little thing. Blender Artist actually is a great little resource. How can you do that? Yeah, so that's what I thought. So it says, here you go. These are the critical settings. I've been doing that, but it says tangent, normal map, tangent, MIP. This has to be UV, not normal. And this has to, the normal has to be up to 1. Okay. Okay, so let's just guess what the issue is. Let's see if that works. So I think I did everything. UV, I already kind of had that in there. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm not seeing it. UV, normal map, use. Oh, this has got to be up. That's right. It's got to be right up to a 1. And I believe that's all I need. Mix, normal, geometry, and no color. Yeah, no color, UV flat. Yeah, that's all I did. But there's still no 3D effect, shape of a so I already made a thing, high res. Oh, no, it should show in real time. So I've done this before. Attachments. Showing below. I have a link. Let's see if you're right. I don't believe it's true, but hey. I think I did everything correct. No. You would see it if it was a normal map. You would see it here, and you don't see it. Maybe we put it the other way around. I think that might be it. Because if you move these around, oh no, yeah, if you move these textures around, the ground and normal, and we want to, this is the normal map. And let me just go back out to show the normal map here. I can see it, yeah. But I'm not seeing any geometry because of the ground. I'm just seeing the normal map. Yeah, that's how I think you do it. Use alpha. And then MIP, interpolation, repeat, UV flat, and normal. Yeah, I think that's it. You just can't see it because it's so subtle. Okay, anyway, so that's the way we apply the normal map. Okay, great. So we've got these two pieces. We've got the texture and the normal map, and we've added them together to give extra additional information. Okay, fantastic. Now I want to make some other. Maybe I talked about the walls. Let's finish this one up. I want to make the walls here, and the walls are going to be, like I said, concrete. Okay, so let's get a concrete texture. So I'm going to go to CG Textures or textures.com. And I'm going to see if I can get some additional material. So notice it says ground. There's also different kinds of windows and metal. And there's concrete. I want to get concrete. And let's get something that looks a little bit rough so we can add a normal map. All right. So this will actually add it looking like it's cracked or whatever. So let's see if we can get this bunker wall happening. And let's choose something that looks a little bit more. This is leaking, painted, damaged. Let's get this damaged look to it. Okay. We'll get something that looks like this. This is 4K plus. Yeah. And you can see that I have, I've signed up, so I have 1 credit. This image, again, is 1024 by 921. The thinking is you should get the highest, kind of the best texture you can within reason. The bigger it is, the crazier it is. Now, this is something that you have to think about. This texture consists of 2 images, this one and this one, image 1 and image 2. And one thing you want is a tileable texture. Is this texture tileable? Look at this. No. So this is not going to work for us. You're going to see some weird anomalies with this one. Let's go back out and find a tileable texture. That's because that's what you want. You want something that's tileable, right? So let's look at this one. Seamless. See where this says seamless? 1024 by 1024? Yeah, baby. This is what I want. Now I have 1 credit. I'm going to download this texture and give it to you guys. Okay, so let's do it. Again, this is just for us, for our non-commercial use, for people who are watching the video. I'm not selling it in any way or anything like that. So here's my downloads. Actually, I'll put it on my desktop just so we can have that. And we'll call this, we'll rename this to concrete bunker or concrete. We'll just call it concrete. Concrete and .jpg. Okay, so there's my concrete. And since we're at it, we might as well make the normal map for it, right? Because we're already here. We might as well make this normal map for it. First of all, what I will do is give it to you guys, because otherwise you won't have what I have, and that would be disappointing. Here's my concrete. Let me put this over here and upload it so you guys can get that off Slack. And there it is. Okay, some anomalies in that texture for sure, which is kind of interesting. It makes it look interesting. It's going to repeat a bunch of times. And now what we want to do it is we want to put it up on this normal map website. So we're going to go to our concrete. Let's put them over here so we can see them. And we'll just drag and drop it over here, which makes it look like we want it. I want to keep the same settings. I don't want to go, look how hairy it makes this ball look, right? So I don't want to go too much more than about 0.15 influence. Again, it's up to you. Sometimes you need to go a little, if you want more pock marks, then you can go a little bit stronger, right? Like for example, maybe you want, something a little bit more. And the more influence you want on the concrete, the more, rough you want to make it, the more influence you want to put, the more strength you want to put here. Again, I don't recommend something that's so crazy. Maybe something as much as 0.5. Even that's a lot. That's a lot of texture, right, to make it really different. Okay, so we'll do that one. We'll make this 1.5. And we'll download this one. So instead of normal map, we'll call it, and by the way, it doesn't matter if you use a JPEG or whatever. However, one thing to note is that Unity prefers PNGs, and mobile application development, when you do anything like that for a mobile device, iOS, Android, PNGs. Don't stay away from JPEGs, okay? They're just better. So if I download this one, I'm going to put it on my desktop. So again, here's on my desktop, and I'm just going to rename it so it says concrete, so the same as what I had before. So where is my concrete texture? That's weird. Okay, whatever. I'm going to call it concrete. Concrete. underscore N. All right, and that one will be here. It's going to look like a normal map. Here it is. And that's my concrete normal map, okay? So I've got both those two things, and I've created those with that program. Okay, cool. Let's get back into Blender now. So I go back into Blender, and I want to apply concrete on the walls and the ceiling. So again, remember that there's a different material. So if I go back to my materials, these are the materials. I can click here, and I've got two materials, ground and walls, right? I'm clicking on this little option right here. All right, so on the walls material now, I want to apply concrete. Okay, now this is where it's going to be more complex. That's why I did the ground floor first, because it's easy. And this one, remember the UVs? They're messed up. They're totally messed up, so it's not going to look right, especially with a normal map. So I'm going to go back to here, onto my texture, and I'm going to rename this thing so it says, instead of text, it's going to say concrete. And I'm just going to make another, when I load the texture, so it says this one is generated. I don't want to generate this one. It's going to come from a UV map that I'm going to load. So maybe what I want to do here is I want to make my own. So where it says type is none, I want to go to image or movie. And I want to load up, so image or movie for type. And I want to open the file that I want, which is on my desktop for concrete, which is concrete JPEG. All right, so see the skewing? Look at the skewing that I'm getting here. This is messed up, guys. Look at it. And I'm not going to put the normal map on for a second. So see that? Look at that. I'm getting all this weird, especially here, skewing. Why is that? Because my UVs, when they unwrapped, they wrapped up weird. They unwrapped kind of terribly, right? So let's go back to my UV editing mode, and I'm going to switch from my normal map here to my concrete. This is what concrete looks like, but instead of selecting these images, I want these ones. So these are all the ones that I want to select, these ones. Okay, so notice I have all these walls here. Here's my walls, and you're going to see how difficult this is to do with the way I've done it. So take a look at what I've got. I've got this really weird unwrap happening. Okay, look at this one here especially. Like, that's really weird. So if I look at it, and if I look at the concrete, here's concrete, it looks like this. It looks like it's all meshed up. Remember, we want to make them as flat and as square as possible, similar to what this looks like right here. So why don't I just unwrap those again? So if I press unwrap, U for unwrap, and if I press unwrap, then you're going to see something that looks like this. Still not accurate. Look, this slice doesn't look right, because that's not the shapes of these things. The shapes are messed up, dudes. Look at that. Right? So if I look here, and what happened over here? Look. So these ones maybe will look okay, but what about this one? Right? That's still, I missed that one somehow, right? So let's go back to that one. Go to concrete. Go to unwrap. Unwrap, and then I have that one, and you can see that that one, if I unwrap each individual one, it looks pretty okay. Like, that doesn't look so bad if I do this one. Look, that kind of okay, right? But the rest of them don't look okay. The rest of them look like they're too big, or they're skewed. Like this one here looks like it's really skewed, like pulled over or whatever, and it doesn't look right. So how do I fix that? So one technique is the type of unwrapping. Also, by the way, we haven't seen what the ceiling looks like. Let's look at that, because that's also messed up. So Alt-H brings back the ceiling. You can see that that is messed up completely. If I press unwrap here, that's actually going to fix things. Look, that's how our ceiling should look. Right? That's how it should look. It should look a pattern that looks like the ceiling. Right? That's pretty cool. But what about this part? So if I look at this part here, you can see that it's, if I follow through this whole thing, so let's just get rid of the ceiling again just for a second. So I just want to just be able to see it. So here, let's just hide this stuff again. It's better sometimes just to create a path. So here's my path, and unwrap this separate. So if I press, unwrap, over here, U for unwrap, and press unwrap, now I get some kind of proportional images that are kind of in a row, right? These islands. Okay? And the reason why they look all straight like this, they're all straight and in line, is because they're not like this. They're not skewed. They're not rotated. They're just straight, like the lines of the wall, right? And I can do the other side. I can go kind of over here on this side, and then I can grab all these images and then unwrap those. So press U for unwrap. And now I can see that I've got straight images. Okay. If I select the ceiling, so I'll press Alt H, and actually just to let me get rid of some additional information so we can make it easy. Here's part of the path. Let's get rid of the this part here. Let's bring it back. Alt H, and instead of getting rid of the ceiling, let's get rid of the floor this time. So we'll just get rid of all this. And now we can see the ceiling tile. So this is the ceiling tile. Okay, so this has got to look like more like a path than the other one does, than the walls do, right? And we're going to bring back that concrete, and then we're going to unwrap over here. So you can see that the path looks more realistic. Okay, so there's my concrete walls and ceiling. And if I press select all to select all those things, now I see that they overlap. Guys, take a look. And you're like, wait a minute, why? How come it's okay here, but they're overlapping here? Well, what's actually happening is the islands are literally placed on top of each other here. So they're sampling from the same locations on my image. That's all that's happening. So that's why we're not really seeing something that's too crazy here in terms of stuff. The challenge here is that they're roughly the same size that they are here, but they're on top of each other. So the way to fix that is to do them separately. So let's say we grab all our images. Actually, let's do that again. We grab these, and I want to fit everything on one map. That's what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale. If I scale in like this, for now, what's going to happen is I'm going to have smaller islands, but these images are going to appear bigger. And that's the first tactic. The first thing is scale smaller for a second. I can always scale back up in a second. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Then just select the ones you want. This is the island for this wall. And I'm going to bring this down by pressing G, the G key, and moving it down to like the corner somewhere. Okay, so this part of my map is for this wall. Okay, and let's choose the other side. So here's my other part. And I'm going to press the G key. I'm going to move that over here, and I'm going to leave a space over here for the ceiling. Let's see if I can do that. So, and I'll move that maybe up here. There we go. Okay, now if I select all, I have 3 separate island groups. Take a look. Now what's this one? Did I miss that one? I may have missed one somehow. This one, this one. So this one, this one, this one, this one. Over here, good. And what about these ones? And the reason why I'm showing you this is because now I'm going to change this up in a second because they're too big. These things are no good. Okay, so that's this one. So what's over here? This one, this one, this one.
I think there's a face somewhere.
Could be.
That's what's showing when you select all.
Yeah, it's fine.
Look at that.
Maybe there's an extra piece of geometry in here that we have to get rid of. That's okay. We can fix that by basically going to, on the left here, we can remove doubles. And we can also do the same thing with the floor. If there's any doubles on the floor, so if I press Alt H to bring back the floor, so Alt H, bring back the floor. And then what we can do is we can remove doubles from the floor as well, right? If there's any doubles. And let's just get rid of the floor for a second. I want to get rid of that. Hide them. And then go back and select all these. Okay, so now that all these are selected, so these are all the maps that are selected, take a look, right? This is too big, so now I can scale this up again, right? So I can make it so that the walls aren't as they're not as crazy. Like they're small. The pock marks on the walls are much smaller than the image, right? And the way to do that is see this bottom square here is a good representation about how big the image should be, which is probably around like that, right? See this? So this is like the whole scale of the wall. This is how big the wall is. And so I want the image to be at least this big, right? And maybe even smaller than that. So maybe make it even twice as small without getting too repeating. Let's make it like something like this. Okay, good. So that's what it looks like. So basically this image has been repeated everywhere, right? Okay, cool. So we've got this image and it looks like this. And the normal maps have been changed. The UV maps are the things that I care about the most. The normal map is just going to repeat too. So that's going to be okay. And we've got the top part of our tunnel. Yeah? Let's go back into default mode where we have the top part. And what we want to do here is just like we did before with the ground texture. We have our ground and we have this other thing that says texture. We want to change this ground to, maybe let's rename it so it says ground _ N for normal. In our walls, we have the same thing. Now we have in the texture, we have concrete, and I want to add another map right here, another texture, and this texture is going to be the UV map. So I'm going to go, oh sorry, the normal map. So I'm going to go open up the desktop. And I'm going to look at the concrete N file, which is our normal map. I'm going to open that up. There's the normal map for the concrete M. You can see that there's a bit of stuff here. And one thing we want is we don't want color, but we do want normal, right? So there's the normal that kind of gets added in. That actually worked out pretty good this time around for that thing. And what I want to do here is I want to apply again, the same level of texture that I applied in the thing. So you can see that there is the influence. If I turn this right up to 1, you're going to get like wacky control, right? Like it's too much, right? And we don't want it to go negative because you can actually go negative as well. If I put this to 0, so put 0, then the influence is going to be no different than what the object is. So I want to kind of put it at least to the influence that I want. So that's 0.5. There we go. So we see kind of a pockmarked area. This is what kind of what it's going to look like now. A rough-hewn looking thing. Okay, I'm going to press Alt-H, and bring back the floor. So that's going to be what our tunnel looks like now. And what I want to do when I've got this done is also make sure that it's packed. So you notice there's this little source here. I want to pack all my images. They're part of the blend file by clicking this little button. And the same thing goes with the other one. So this is my concrete _N. And what I also want to do here is I want to pack my other one, my concrete file. I want to pack that one. And you can see that if they're not packed, they don't have this little envelope. It looks like almost like a little envelope in a box, right? So if I look at all of them, if I go back to this one, ground, and I go to texture, I can see that that's packed. And I can go to the ground, that's packed, right? So now they're all packed in here. That's my little tunnel, okay? And that's how it'll look approximately. I want to bring this into Unity. So this is the thing. And I'm going to take this blend file, save it, and I'm going to drop it into Slack for you guys to use right now. So you don't have to do all this work, okay? So you guys have what I have. So let's do that. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and we're going to make this thing, we're going to call it, you know, a tunnel. Blend, and we're going to save the blend file on my desktop. There it is. Okay, that's the whole blend file. And it has all the information, okay? And there's going to be a difference between the blend file and the FBX. Remember I talked about FBX is film box. That's the format that we can export it. But actually Unity takes Blender right away from native, Blender native. It takes it inside the thing, right? So let's make a new Unity project. I'm just going to just click on Unity to start off my Unity. Again, this is part of the workflow. Notice how long it's taken. It's taken us a couple hours just to make the stuff, and I'm explaining stuff too. You can actually go a lot faster than me if you were to do it by yourself. So I'm going to go into a new Unity file. We're going to call this COMP253 in the fall 2018 semester, and it's lesson 10. It's going to be 3D. I'm going to create a project. And what I want to do is with my blend file, which is this tunnel blend, which I'm going to pop into Slack for you guys. I'm going to give you Slack. Here's my tunnel blend file. All right. I've just uploaded it on Slack now, so you guys can get it too. All right, there it is. You got it. It's 9 megs. You should see it on the Slack channel. So you don't have to do it. If you were just watching, and that's okay, you can please do it now with Unity though, so we can talk about it. Otherwise, when you do your assignment 2, these are a lot of little piece parts. Okay, there we go. So we've got our tunnel uploaded, and I'm waiting for Unity to start. It'll start in a second. And I want to show you what it does, which is very interesting. Remember, Unity, I have a certain way of doing stuff with Unity. Now, I'm not going to get this new version right now. So whenever I start Unity, I do a couple things. And again, I recommend you develop your own workflow. But one is, I personally like this view. Right? You can do whatever you like. I know some people like different views where you have both the game and the scene in the same viewport. That's fine. Right now, all I care about is a scene. Under Scenes in Unity, I have this Scenes folder. I'm just going to rename this to _scenes. Right? Here's my _scenes. I'm also going to make a new folder that I'm going to call Models. Here's my Models folder, right? Now what I can do is, I know it's kind of hard to see here because I'm small, I'm really small. What I want to do here in my models folder is I want to drag and drop my tunnel.blend file. I'm going to drag and drop it into my models folder like this. And then you should see in a second my tunnel that came from Blender. There it is. There's my tunnel. Let's just move to a different resolution so you guys can see a little better. Just a second. I'll just change this to 125%. That should help a lot. All right. Yeah, there it is. So there's my tunnel. Take a look. So my tunnel actually has my tunnel object, and it came with my concrete JPEG, my gravel cobble, and my concrete walls. That's what it came with, right? So walls, gravel cobble, and concrete. That's interesting. It didn't include everything I wanted though, yeah? And if I was to pull this whole thing in, so the whole tunnel object inside of my scene, I get something that looks like this, right? Look, it actually does the backface culling for me. Not that I wanted it to, but that's what it does. And I don't have any of the textures in here at all. One thing to note is it's created a bunch of materials. So there's my one of my maps, material that looks like albedo, and a couple of other materials. When you bring a file in from Blender, if you actually look at the inspector on the right, it shows all the information that you've given it. Here's materials. It says use embedded materials, right? I imported my materials. However, I can also extract the materials that I want, right? This is one thing I want to do. I can extract materials, and I can extract materials into a specific folder. So here's my models. Let's go into a new folder. We're going to make it my materials folder. Right, so there's my materials folder. Select my folder, and it should populate my when I check this on in a second, it should populate my stuff inside the materials folder. Right, so that's what it does. It should extract the materials and textures there. Okay, so that's use embedded materials. Okay. So the model itself also has these, so it shows you the 3 materials that it has, right? These are the 3 materials. Notice I have complete control over them, right? But I don't have any of the textures. So Blender, one thing it didn't do for me is it didn't bring all the textures in for me at all. It just brought the materials in. And it only brought in three materials: ground concrete, ground gravel cobble. I don't know why it did that, right? And a walls concrete, which is something interesting. Okay. Well, what I need is my textures. So let's make a new folder called textures. There's my new textures folder. And I'm going to bring all my textures in now into Unity as well. So I have my gravel cobble. I'm going to click on my concrete normal map and my gravel cobble normal map. I'm going to put all that stuff and bring them into my textures folder inside Unity. And it's going to convert these textures into something that I can use. So in my textures folder now, I have all these four things. I just dragged and dropped them in. Okay, so if I look at my materials, I have my gravel concrete, ground concrete, and walls concrete. I also have my gravel cobble ground. I don't know why I have two, but let's rename these things. So this one I want to call ground. This one I want to call walls. Okay, I don't know what this one is yet. I may need this one as well. It looks like the same thing, but let's just choose the ground material first. So on my ground material, I have my albedo as this color. I don't want the albedo as this color. I want the albedo as my ground material, which is the gravel cobble. So I'm going to take this gravel cobble and just drag and drop it into there. There's the ground. And it looks like I missed a UV. Look at that. Look, or maybe that's part of the other texture that I used. I'm not sure what that is. Why it did this. That's a weird thing. And I also have this gravel cobble. I also have a gravel cobble. Now, notice there's actually a color here, and I don't want the color to show up at all. In fact, I want it kind of to be white, like kind of no color, right? And in fact, if anything, I want my alpha to be 0 on the color. That's what I want to do, is turn that color alpha to 0. Okay, but now I want my normal map to appear there too. So I'm going to take the gravel cobble normal map that I created and drag that in. Here's my gravel cobble normal map. And it says, this texture is not marked as normal map. Let's fix it so it is a normal map. Yay. And that comes in as my normal map. So my normal map is in there now too. All right, that's my ground. Again, I'm not sure what happened here. Okay, what about my other material? I have another material called ground concrete. Not sure what's happening here. Let's make sure that this is, again, kind of turned down in terms of normal map. And then I want to drag and drop my textures. My textures in here too. I want to grab my, just in case, I want to grab my concrete into my albedo. Oh, that's where it was. Yeah, for sure. And I also want to grab my, instead of concrete in there, let's grab in gravel cobble in there. So I just want to see what that was. There it is, gravel cobble. And I'm going to drag and drop my gravel cobble N in there as well. There's my normal map. So that's one thing I need to do. And here, like I said, I want this to be no color, right? And I guess it needed both for some reason or another. This is almost like this one slot had two materials. I don't know how that happened, but sometimes you get anomalies that way. Okay, cool. So I've got two materials. Let's fix the material. So one of them is like, ground. We'll just call it a ground 2. So we know it's like that extra material that we have. Ground 2. Good. Look, I've got my, my stuff in here. It looks like it's a pretty good cobblestone, but my walls aren't there. Let's put my walls back now. All right. So again, just like we did before, I go in my walls, I go into my textures, and I take my concrete and I put it inside the concrete. Looks like it's green because of my coloration. I can turn the coloration so it's completely off. Right? There it is, like this. And I can make my alpha 0 to make sure that there's no coloration or influence. And I can do the same thing with my normal map. I can take my concrete normal map and drag and drop it inside the material. Oops, inside the material. So grab my normal map, concrete normal, and drag and drop it inside the normal map. It's going to ask me to fix it again. I'm going to say yes, fix it, which is going to apply this normal map on the walls and the ceiling. And if you look at the ceiling, you can see that the ceiling is there as well. So that's what my thing looks like, and it looks pretty realistic. Take a look. That's what it looks like right now. In fact, it looks maybe a little bit too pockmarked. Remember I went to 0.5 instead of 0.15? You may want to choose to go a lot lighter than this, guys, because the influence of the normal map is too high, too heavy. So what I'm getting is an illusion. There isn't this kind of geometry. The geometry is flat. I didn't subdivide my surfaces in any way. So now we get to this idea of low poly meshes. My tunnel is a low poly mesh. It's a low poly mesh because my tunnel, if you think about it, is just a cube that I extruded a bunch of times. That's all I did. I didn't do anything with it. I mean, I might have how many extra pieces of information? Not much, right? Okay, how do I test this out? I want to walk through this thing, right? I want to walk through this thing. Well, a couple things, we have a couple problems here. One is, if I go back to my model, so here's my tunnel, right? This is my tunnel. And this is all the information that I got from it. I got an animator. Notice I got a mesh render. I don't need an animator, so let's just get rid of that, right? So no animator required. Remove that component. I got some materials. I got a couple of materials here for my tunnel. There's 3 materials that have been applied to the UVs. And these are the materials that I got here. Ground, walls, ground tube, because I had some kind of weird anomaly, right? These are these things here. I got some lighting, which I need, which is part of my mesh renderer, but I don't have a, any kind of collider. And you need a collider, or else this is going to be a nice picture, but everything's going to go right through it, right? So how do I make a collider that works here? You guys know what a collider is in Unity? I don't know how far you got, right? Yes? It's the same. So whether it's 3D or 2D, it's the same. You're almost like going to put a thin layer of collision calculations on anywhere you want, right? But now we have this weird anomaly where my object is actually one thing. It's all one. My tunnel is actually one cube that's been extruded, right? What the heck? How am I going to put a collider on that? It's going to be on the outside, but I want to walk on the inside, right? Well, a couple things. One, let's go back to our models. Models have some really interesting information here. If you notice, in the model itself, right, it says there's swap UVs. I can also generate light UVs. I can do that, right? And I can apply this, right? These are the things I can do. So this is an example of my tunnel, my imported object, right? I can also do something called generate colliders. Take a look at that. Generate colliders. So I can click that on. And then to generate this thing, if I scroll all the way down where it says apply, I can apply this thing so that it has on my tunnel, it actually applies my collider. So if I click on my tunnel again now, I have a mesh collider. I have a mesh collider, right? But I need to make it convex, right? I believe it's convex. Let's make sure that that's correct. All right, cool. So I've got my convex collider. I still don't know if it's even working. It's going to work, right? I want to put a person in there and walk through. How do I do that? Well, Unity has some great standard assets we can use, right? So we're going to go to assets. And if your Unity version doesn't have this, you have to import them differently. But I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to import a package. And I'm going to just go to characters. Do you guys have that? Okay. If you don't have this, you need to go to the asset store. And you have to sign up for Unity anyway. And the way to do that is if you go to the asset store and if you go to standard assets. So if you go standard assets, and if you look at Unity Technologies, this one, then you're going to have your standard assets package that you can download. Now they're pretty big. It's 182 megs or whatever. But if you download it or accept it and click import, I'll do the same thing as you. So I'm not going to have anything different than you, okay? And then I'm going to put this whole thing up on Slack, the whole Unity project, okay? If I can, if it lets me. Here's my import. I'm going to import this thing. And what this is allowing me to do when I import it, it's going to ask me what I want. I want a first-person perspective character to come through so I can walk through the scene. That's what I want to do. So I'll give you an idea of how it's going to work, okay? Now, it's a big file, so it's going to take time. So this is what it looks like, okay? Now, it says it's going to come with some materials. It also has some audio, like a propeller and other things. It has a menu for prefabs, like a bunch of different things here, some scripts that it has here, and it has a bunch of models. I'm just going to see if it has my characters, because that's what I really want. So I don't care about all this stuff. I just want some of it, right? Here's some standard assets. I got Robot Boy and a ton of other stuff. It's going to make this project too big, though. So I don't care about cameras. I'm going to undo those. I don't think I need that. Actually, I may need this. We'll see in a second. I definitely want characters. I don't want all the characters, though. I don't want the roller ball, and I don't want the third-person controller for now. I do need cross-platform input. I need to make the editor changes and effects. I'll take all these effects, no problem. The environment I don't need. I don't need speed tree and all that stuff. So that can stay off. Fonts, okay. I'm okay with fonts. Particle systems. Probably don't need any of this stuff. So let's turn the particle systems off. That's probably too big. Physics materials I'll keep. Prototyping, I won't. Right, so I don't need that stuff. Utility, that's probably going to be useful. Vehicles, I won't take. So vehicles, I don't want. So I'm just going to kind of take all the stuff I want and leave the rest, because otherwise, my friends, the project is going to be massive. I want to take my materials, audio mixers for the sample scenes, eh? Is that what it is? Models, prefabs. Just want to make sure that I have everything that I don't want to have everything I don't need. Textures. Yeah, so I don't need my sample scene, so I can get rid of all this stuff. I don't need all that. But I definitely want my 2D standard assets. And what else do I have here? Animations for Robot Boy for 2D. I don't need 2D stuff. Or cameras, but I do need characters. Okay, I think this might be enough. Let's see if I can just input my characters in here. And I should be okay. Should be. Let's go. Import. And by the way, if it doesn't work out, you can always do it again. Right? If this doesn't work, what I'm going to do is get the standard assets that I can download that, because you can actually, when you install Unity, you can choose to include standard assets, which I always do. So I don't have to do any of this stuff, right? But maybe the computer's in front of you, or maybe when you did your installation on Unity, you didn't include everything. You included nothing. So what you may have to do is go back and install everything again, right? If you care about that. Otherwise, you're going to have to do this every time, which to me is a pain in the ass, right? So, although there are some people that say it's better to do it this way than the other way, because then your Unity installation is massive, right? So, there's two ways of thinking of that. So I've done it. Let's go back and see what I've got for standard assets. It looks like I've got my characters, and all I care about is my first-person character. And I've got my prefab for my first-person character called an FPS controller. So I'm going to take this and put it inside my scene. And what it appears to be, if you look at this thing, is this guy who's about 2 meters high. He's actually quite big, maybe too big for my scene. And he's going to be positioned in the scene. If I press play now, let's see if it works. I have compiler errors. This is a bad thing. This is where I have a problem with trying to do what I just did, because there's missing stuff. That's why it's giving me compiler errors. I got all these things. End layout group, begin layout group must be first called, and some kind of stuff that I'm missing. So, guys, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to do it my way. And then what I'll do is I will put this on maybe GitHub as well as Slack, and so that you have all this stuff, without me. Let me just run and see if I have a compiler error still. So I should be able to run the scene without anything. That's what it would look like right now. So I have my standard camera. Let's try that again. So my sample scene, I want to rename as main. Okay, and let us try that again. So I'm going to say assets, import package, characters. That's what I want. And I only care about my first-person controller characters. I don't care about my rollerball or third person. I don't care about those things. I do want cross-platform input, though. I kind of did it. I think I did it right, but I mean, somehow I missed something. So who knows? This is where I have a problem with doing it through the asset store. Sometimes you have to get everything, and that's like hundreds of megs of stuff that you don't need, right? And it's hard to sift through which parts you need and which parts you don't. I don't like that. I mean, then your application becomes really fat, right? Which I don't agree with. All right, let's see if I got this now. So go to standard assets, and let's get my characters and my first person character, my prefab, and drag and drop my FPS controller in my scene. And let's press play. Please play. Yeah, and now I'm like, oh, I fell. Look, it's falling, right? And it's falling because I got pushed out of here because of my my tunnel, right? This is what's happening. Maybe we go back to regular collider and let's try that again. So yeah, this is good. All right, so I got the regular collider. So this is what I look like right now. Look, right? So I'm walking through now, and you can see that I can go through the entire tunnel and look around just like a regular FPS controller. Now, the reason why it looks this way, and I'm clipping through the part, is because my camera is to the top of the tunnel. Remember what we didn't do? One thing we didn't do in Blender? What did we didn't do? Scale. We didn't create a scale. We didn't change the meters, what we did last week. We forgot to do that. We can fix this, however, by just rescaling my tunnel. So I'm going to go to my tunnel, and I'm just going to choose my scale tool that's in here, and I'm just going to scale it proportionally so it's bigger. Right, that's what's going to happen. And I'm also going to move it up a little bit, so it's moving up in the world, maybe across a little bit. So there it is. And if I go back to my character, which is this guy right here, he's not going to look as tall anymore, right? I'm also going to see if I can turn on. Yeah, it's going to display. I want to see if you guys can hear the stuff that it comes with, right? So because you can turn on the volume. I wonder if the volume is just off. All right, and let's rename this. The player will be called player. I can rename my prefab so it says player, right? So that's the player. And also inside the player, I have something called a player cam. My first person character is there's a camera inside there. The camera is actually in his head. That's where it is. Notice that there's a camera right here, right? I also have a main camera for the scene. I can get rid of that main camera now because I don't need it anymore. So get rid of that camera. All I need is the camera that's inside the player's head, right? Which is here. We'll just call this player cam. All right, so here's my player cam and everything else. What I want to do is, I don't want to do this again. Here's my tunnel. I want to create in my scene, in my assets, I want to create another folder called prefabs. So create folder called prefabs. And in my prefabs folder, I want to drag and drop those two things, my tunnel and my player, for now. So grab these two things, put them inside here, put them in here, and pull my tunnel in here. And now what I have is additional prefabs, right? That I can always duplicate my player again. All right, let's try this out and see if it works. So, well, okay, let's see. You guys don't hear anything. It's one of those things today where you don't hear anything on the speakers anymore. I don't know why, right? So let's try this. Oh, there we go. There we go. So we got some. I can walk around. I got a bit of head bob. That comes with a default controller. Notice I can look at the ceiling and it looks pretty pockmarked. I can go right to the edge of this thing and it looks pretty bad. That's how it should look, right? But take a look here. I've got these pockmarks here, and these ones look like they're pushed into me. Why is that? The normals are reversed, right? So that's kind of weird. And same thing goes over here, and over here is okay. But the beginning of that thing doesn't look right, right? Also, there's no lights. I didn't import any of the lights in the scene. Right. So, and also, what the heck is this? There's a shadow that's on this corner. What's going on here? Right. Well, Blender's not perfect. And it seems to me that this edge here is created a weird effect. Right. Remember we talked about like lights and shadows. I don't have anything in here to produce any kind of lighting. The lighting is the ambient light that's coming from outside the scene. Right. All right, let's get out of here and try this again. And this time what I can do is I have a directional light that's inside the scene. This is kind of an ambient light. If I can actually turn this directional light off. And you can see that the scene automatically darkens. The game will look like this now, so quite dark, right? And my player also starts, if you notice where my player's camera looks, my player's camera is looking out the window over here. And what I can do is I can rotate the whole player. So I can take this whole player here, and I want to rotate him across the y-axis here about 180 degrees. So let's just say 180. So now my player is looking in a different direction. So here's my camera. Now he's looking in the scene. So this is what my player will see. It's quite dark, right? I want to add some lights to the scene, and I can do that in Unity. So I can go here and I right click and I'll add a new light, which I will call a point light. And I can add the point light anywhere I like. Right now the point light is inside the player, okay? That's not a bad thing. It just means my player will glow like this. So kind of it's almost like I'm holding a lamp. The player is holding a lamp now, right? And I just walk, and you can see that it illuminates the entire scene. So it kind of, wherever I am, I have some lighting, but in the other areas way down there, there's no light. Again, I do see some light in the scene. And for those people who don't know Unity so well, one of the challenges I have is right now I'm getting ambient light from the scene itself. Here's the game. And you can see that I got this ambient light. And, well, if I go to my camera is looking at a skybox. My skybox is this blue thing that looks like the sky. I don't want that. I want my skybox to be solid color. And I want my color in the background to be black. Right? So I can do that too. I can change these settings in my camera. And if I go back to the game now, I'm going to see something that looks like this. Black, right? So there's nothing in there at all. And now it's total darkness. Now it still seems like there's a little bit of light in here. And the reason for that is not just my lamp, but you have to look at the lighting window. So if you look at, again, if you go general, where is it now? It's under, sorry. It's under rendering, I believe, lighting settings, right? So if I go to lighting settings, and if I just pull this, I'm going to pull this into my side here. So if you look at the lighting settings, right now, my default skybox is the skybox material. My sun source is whatever it is. And you can see that it has different lighting for the scene. Okay, so my source is my skybox for environmental lighting. I can also make it a color. And I can make my color so that it is completely black, right? This is what it is like. So let's take a look at this. Now, if I go back into the scene, now it looks like this. It's a dark tunnel where I can't see anything. And if I look through here, you can see there's no light. But as I walk, because I have a lamp that's parented to the character, I can see where I'm going, right? So it can kind of be a scary little scene, right? But look at the details that I'm getting in my texture. This texture, the details are coming from the normal map. It's creating this illusion of depth. Questions so far? I know I went through a lot of stuff here, but this is not tiles that I've asked you to do for your assignment, but this is the beginning of, hey, let's think about how to make this a little bit easier for us, because now I have this big, long tunnel. How can I make a whole level like this? Well, I really can't, right? The tunnel doesn't connect to each other, and I got to think about ways of chopping up this tunnel to make it so that it is something that I can, stitch together, like different pieces of the tunnel, if I was going to do that. Now, you don't have to make it a tunnel. You can even make it, and this is where I'm going to recommend to you, walls and floor. Ceiling that's separate. Wall, floor, and ceiling. Almost like something that looks like a seat. Or wall, floors, and ceilings on both sides, right? I have a straight piece. I have a curved piece. I have a piece that's a T. I have a piece that's a dead end with an end cap to it. And you can add additional pieces in there. For example, right now my tunnel is very basic. My tunnel doesn't have any lights, like a light model. Like I can make a light model looks like a tunnel light. And I can put a light inside that tunnel light. So it glows almost like there's lights in the tunnel, right? But in order for me to do that, I have a lot more work to do. Okay. All right. So we've kind of got this stuff. I want to save the scene here, and like I said, I'm going to share this with you on if I can on Slack. If I can't, I'll put it up on GitHub. Let's do this. I'm going to say File, Save Scene, File, Save Project, and I'm going to just close this off here, and I'm going to give you this whole thing, and it should be, if I'm not wrong, in my Unity projects on my desktop somewhere. And I'm just going to go back to moving to my desktop. That it is my display settings. I'll go back to regular display settings. We're going to get back into Blender before we finish for today. Yeah, so here's my Unity projects, and one of them is this one here, which is, let's just get rid of this one. We'll delete this one, and we'll make a new one for less than 10. So we will make a new one. Great, there it is. And what I'm going to do here is drag it into Slack. Let's see if that's possible. How big is it? 26 megs. Okay, it should be doable. Let's see if that's possible. So Slack, upload. And you guys should have the Unity project. Okay, so why don't you download that? Let's be on the same page. Download that project, check it out, see if it works for you. But it's an example of what we've done up till now, right? In terms of the stuff that we've done. All right, so recap. What have we done so far today? Let's go back into Blender. So in Blender, we made this tunnel, right? Yay, really interesting and not really interesting. But you know, one thing we have is this long thing, and it doesn't really connect. Like there's no way easily to do it where I can continue the tunnel. I mean, I could flip it in Unity. So if I go back to Unity, let's go back in there for a second. So I could flip it around and do that. But we also have a problem with the scale. The scale's all wrong. Like one thing we didn't do inside of Blender is, like I said, in here, inside the scene tab, what we should have done is change this from Blender units to meters, right? And this would have made it so that the tunnel would have been a bunch of meters tall, right? Like almost 3 meters high, which makes sense, right? So that our character can nicely fit inside of there. Okay, but back to Unity. What we could do with Unity, right, is we have this tunnel, we could make a duplicate of it. So Shift D, we had a duplicate of the tunnel, right? Or Control D, right? There's my tunnel duplicate. And what I could do in Unity is pull this tunnel out. So we have 2 tunnels. And then rotate this thing. So I'm going to go back to rotation. And rotate this thing so that it somehow maybe connects. But look at the challenge we're going to have here. Like, this is a lot of work for us to make this tunnel work, right? I mean, it doesn't really snap properly. You know, it's not made to tile. That's not how we did it at all, right? So here's where we can probably snap it together. And let's just rotate it again. Rotate it again until we get, you know, the kind of a thing that's kind of snappy. Let's see if we can do this thing across this axis here. So we kind of make it so it connects kind of, but not really. And we get the Z fighting stuff. Look at the Z fighting. This is Z fighting, guys, where you see this part. That's bad. And 2 textures that are kind of touching with each other. One thing you could do is you could use V-snapping. You could use V-snapping. So in Unity, I'm not sure if you know, but if I press the V key in Unity, I get this vertex. And I could do this where I vertex snap. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So it snaps to vertex. And I could do the same thing here where I vertex snap. But the problem here is that it's not really aligned properly, and I'm going to have to rotate the crap out of it until it is, you know, thing. So this is not really great. It's not really a great workflow. Like for me to do it this way and try and do it so, you know, it aligns properly and stuff like that. It just doesn't make any sense, guys, right? So wouldn't it be nice if we had snappable tiles that were approximately the same size that we could align properly in Unity and use in our scene, right? By the way, if we were to play this right now, it would look like this. So back dark tunnel, and then we get to this place where like, there's a separation in my scene. I can kind of go into the other one too, because guess what? I copied it, and it looks like it's a long tunnel and like a long dark tunnel, right? Which is kind of cool, but still not perfect. And I wouldn't want to have a you know, dead space like this in the middle of the scene. It looks broken, right? And it is. So that's why we made it. But this is the first part of our level design, if you will, for this, I don't know, Phantom 3D game we're making. I'm not going to save everything. I'm just going to close this off. And I'm going to go back to this. So this is neat, but not really great. What do I do? First of all, one thing to note in Blender is if you look here, there is a series of spots right here in the middle of Blender. These are layers, right? So if I look at this one, there's nothing in this layer, but there is something in this layer. And so I can have many little spaces in Blender where I can do my modeling, okay? So this is kind of neat that I can do here. So if I go here, I can see that I have piece parts of my scene. And if I wanted to make a straight, let's say I was going to just use the same options here, right? I want to keep this, but I don't want to make it so that it is you know, I don't want to make it just like this. Let's go into edit mode. And what I want to do is I want to remove geometry. This geometry I want to remove. I only want to keep the straight piece. Well, is it going to work? Like I unwrapped it. Is it going to mess me up? Well, a couple of things to note. I don't want to lose everything that I did. So what if I copied this thing? So let's say we'll do a Shift D to copy it and press Enter. And then what I want to do is move my copy to another layer. So if I press the M key, you can move to another layer. So now I have two of them. I have one here and I have one here, right? Let's move into this layer, the layer that doesn't have anything. This is kind of black right now. This layer, pretty dark, but I have some lights. Notice the lights didn't move. I didn't copy the lights. If I want to copy the lights, I can do the same thing. I can just go to point lamp 1 and 2 in the outliner. So I got these lights, Shift D for duplicate and Enter, and then do the same thing. Click M and move them to this thing, right? So now when I go back to this scene, I got lights here too. All right, cool. So I've got lights. I want to go into the second tab here, not the first one, but the second one, and modify this object. So again, I'm going to click this object, go into edit mode, and I want to get rid of all this extra geometry that I don't need. I want to just have one part. All right, cool. So how do I do that? Well, I could go into wireframe mode like we've done before many times. Use B select mode, box select. And I can select the pieces that I don't want. And then I can just press X and delete my faces. So now I have this one part. I also have an extra lamp, which I don't need. So my extra lamp is right here. Let's just get rid of it. And now I have this one piece, which is kind of over here. And if I go back into regular mode, you can see that it still has the material applied and the UVs because we've already unwrapped it. It's using the same UVs, right, for this little piece. Well, this is a pretty good piece here, but wouldn't it be nice if it was like in the middle of my scene, snapped together, blah, blah, blah. How do I do that? So one thing is I want to get this point lamp, this one, and I want to make it so that it is parented to this thing. That's what I want it to do. So I can join those two things together, right? Because it's just a container, right? So I've got this other thing called cube. This is called cube. Let's just make this thing called straight. This is the straight piece, right? So my straight piece and this lamp, which is called 0.2, let's call this straight lamp. We're going to name it so that it has some kind of meaning, you know, straight lamp. Here's my straight lamp and my straight. I want to make my straight lamp and my straight part of the same thing. I want to kind of join them together, right? Now, normally it goes like this. You click the first object, and then the second object, you control click, right? Sorry, you shift click. And then the second object, what you want to do is join, right? So control J to join. And it says no mesh data to join. I want to kind of parent almost this one to this one. The other way to do that is to create a, if you go to object, and if you say parent, and I want to control P, parent my object to some other object, right? So again, the way I want to do it is I want to say that this one is parented to this one, and I can press control P, and it says set parent to object. All right, so now notice that my straight lamp is inside of my straight object. So if I move my object, my lamp moves too in Blender. This is what I want to kind of, so control P parents it, right? All right, cool. So this is one part. I also want to recenter this piece in the middle. One way to do that, of course, is Shift S, which makes my cursor go to wherever I want. So Shift S, cursor to center. And then right click this piece. So I've got this piece selected. Notice this is another problem I have. When I cut my piece up, I have the center of my selection way on the other side now. Why is that? Because I have this long tunnel and I cut it up. And remember that my original cube was way at the other end. So it stayed there. What I can do is I can change my origin to my geometry. So I can set origin to geometry. And if you notice, it's a Shift Control Alt C. It's a shortcut if you want to remember that. Now my origin is there, right? And now what I can do is I can do Shift S, and then I can say set selection back to cursor, which moves it back in there. So this is the middle of the scene. Okay. And I want to rotate it. Notice up here, my rotations are, there's nothing there. And one of the things that I'm going to see later on is I want to normalize all these things like this, but it's been done the wrong way. So I want to kind of, rotate across the Z axis. And again, this is going to be by eye, guys, because I don't have the exact scale of this thing. So I'm trying to put it in the middle, and it's kind of straight, not exactly, but it's kind of straight. And this is the kind of thing that I want. I want to make it so that each of my objects is centered kind of in the middle. But let's take it one step further. This object here should be on the grid. So what I want to do is I want to put this up here near the grid, right? And notice what I've done is I've translated this in by about 1.13. It's weird because, take a look, my dimensions are all weird. Because I didn't change units to from Blender units to meters, I got this wacky dimension stuff going on here, 4.3, some weird thing. So we need to start from scratch. I'm just showing you how to move things around. But at the end of the day, I want to create stuff that we can apply these two textures to and tile them all together. This is part of your assignment, right? So let's get rid of this. And what I want to do is, now that my cursor's in the center, I want to Shift A and add a new mesh. We're going to add a new cube. So this is a new cube. There we go, right? Remember, we already have the texture and material information. We can just reuse it. We may need to unwrap my cube, but that's one thing I need. Okay, so now that I have my cube, notice that we're in meters. This is perfect meters, 2 meters by 2 meters. Maybe I want to make it 3 meters high. I want to try and do that. So I want to modify the scale of my object to, kind of 3 meters on this side. There's a couple ways to do that. One is to actually change the dimensions on the Z-axis to 3, which scales it. But notice it says my Z-axis is now 1.5 times. I don't want any scalar information going into Unity. It's got to be 1-to-1, okay? And I'll talk about that in a second. So that's one. The other thing is I want to make this stretch a little longer than this. So I want to kind of scale across the X-axis a bunch. And maybe what I want to do, I want to make my tunnel about that long, okay? And it says it's about 6.3 something, blah, blah, blah. Let's make it 6. Even numbers, okay? Even better might be 5. Okay, so like kind of a, 2 by 3 by 5, right? If this isn't wide for you enough, right, because it's only 2 meters wide, that means the character is only going to have a little bit of space on the right and a little space on the left. Maybe make it wider too. Maybe make it so that the, it's a square 3 by 3 by 5. Okay, so that's kind of your tunnel. By the way, did you notice the thing we did? We made everything square when we did the UV map. What about if it's a curve? Right? How the heck do we unwrap a curve, right, in the UV map? It's not going to unwrap like this, flat. It's going to unwrap with it. It's me. It's going to unwrap so that it's pretty messed up, right? Let's just get rid of this. But for now, let's just talk about this. Let's talk about how to unwrap this thing. So one is we don't need the faces on the end, so we'll get rid of that. We're going to edit mode, and I'll select this face on the end, get rid of it. So delete my faces. We'll delete the other side of it as well. Okay, we've done those things before. And notice that it's kind of set underneath the level of the floor. We want to make it up so it's the top of the floor. So again, the way to do that is when I select my object, I want to bring it up. So from a location perspective, if it is 3 meters high, that means it's got to move up 1.5 meters. So on the Z-axis, I'm going to move this up 1.5. So now it's sitting on the floor. Okay. Also, this is bad, right? Putting my geometry on the middle of my object doesn't make any good sense for snapping. So I'm going to show you what to do here instead. So what I want to do is I want to move it, because we know the things, I want to move it so that the corner, I'm going to do it by eye for now, okay, and then I'll tell you how to do it numerically. I want to move it so that the corner is right here, right on the corner of my world space, right here somewhere. Okay, so what I wanted to do is move this so that it is exactly 2.5 this way, right? Because it's 5 long, 2.5 would be exactly in the middle. This should be a y of minus 1.5, and this should be exactly 1.5. So this is right now, you can notice that the cursor is right on the corner of this thing. Hear me out. Hear me out. I know you're like, why? Now, if I go back to origin, I can set my origin to the 3D cursor. And now when I rotate, my friends, I see that I rotate from here, or I rotate from here, or I rotate from here, which is what I want to do. Then I can rotate from different places and snap to those locations, right? Whereas if I'm in the middle, it's kind of a weird, snappy thing. Like, how do I rotate that and connect things together, right? It becomes challenging. So now that I have this, I have my location and everything else. I want to go into edit mode, and I want to select all my faces, and I'm going to unwrap everything. Remember, I have other UV maps now. I have 2 sets of UV maps, one for the other shape, the other object, and one for this one. There's 2 separate image files that I have. In fact, I could modify the UV maps by hand in a thing like, we're going to do that later on, in Photoshop. Example, what if I want to make this wall have graffiti, right? Have an image, put the UV map, copy the image, do graffiti, apply that graffiti image, the wall with graffiti on it, to my map, add a normal map. The normal map is going to have bumpy graffiti, because whatever the bumpiness of the thing is going to be. And you can do that kind of stuff. And that's what artists would do. They kind of put a texture on different parts of the scene, and then they paint stuff on and add dirt and stuff on there and make it look, more realistic. Because remember my tunnel. My tunnel was perfectly concrete, and it had some pock marks, but it looked identical everywhere. And that doesn't make any sense. It's not realistic. It's not like dirty. I want like dirty rust stains. I want like, stuff flowing in the tunnel, all these other things. And that means more and more and more and more textures everywhere. All right, so going back to this, I have my object. It's been unwrapped. Let's go back into UV editing mode. So here's my UV editing mode. Notice that when I unwrapped, okay, I unwrapped, but the problem is, couple things. One is I never set up my materials. So I'm going to go back to object mode. There's no material set up on this thing. There's no lighting, so I'm not going to see a darn thing. So I need to put that in there too. And sure, I'm going to want to have this stuff done, but I haven't really blocked out where my textures are going to be or anything like that. Okay, so let's go back to my default mode for a second. And let's add the things we need. So let's add a light. So Shift A, we're going to add a new lamp, which we're going to make a point lamp. And we're going to move this up and over. So it's just highlighting one part of my tunnel, maybe right here in the corner. So we want to put that in there to give me some light. The point lamp is going to be called the straight. Actually, I have a straight lamp. That's way over here. I'm just going to delete it because I have this exact location here. And we'll just rename this one to straight. So let's go back to that point lamp. There we go. Here's my point lamp. I'm just going to rename this to straight lamp. Straight lamp. There we go. There's my straight lamp. It's right there. And I want to add some materials to my tunnel. This is actually called the cube. We'll just call this straight, like we did before. There it is. And in my straight, I want to parent my lamp to my straight. So again, choose my lamp first, and then the final thing is where I'm going to connect it to. So here's origin, so source and destination. Destination, I want to make it go to the straight, and then if I press Control P for parent, then it moves inside of my straight object. So now my lamp is inside or parented to my straight game object. That's what it is, right? So if I move this around now, lamp moves with me, and take a look. There's actually a little dotted line that moves down to the origin of my object. Okay? So that's how that happens. Good, good, good. My material. So my straight material, it has this. There's no material. So let's add a new material. Or do we? Or can I just pick materials now? Because I already did all that work. Why would I do it all again, right? So again, I'm going to go here. I'm going to choose that I'm going to have ground material. There's my material slot. Notice that it doesn't work very well. And I'm also going to have another material slot for the walls. So ground and walls, right? Put the walls up and the ground down. Doesn't really matter. I have these two materials that are associated with this object. Okay? Cool, cool. Now, what if I want to have different kinds of ground? I want to have a cobble ground. I want to have a ground that has tiles. I want to have a ground that's cracked. I want a ground that there's different kinds of grounds. Then what I would do is separate the floor plane from my walls, right? And then I could construct different pieces of it together to make my level, which is what you're going to have to do for your assignment. Okay? But now look at this crazy stuff, right? How come it did this? Well, because we didn't really unwrap it properly. So let's go back into UV editing mode now. Here's my, oh, first of all, that's one. The other thing is that inside, before we go there, inside my stuff, I have everything is one material. Everything is ground. I want the bottom to be cobble, my ground material, this one. But the walls and the ceiling, I want those to be walls. And if you notice, I can just click assign, which assigns those a different texture than these, right? But now we have to do our unwrapping a little bit differently. Okay, let's go back and do that again. So if I press this, there's another unwrap option, which is cube projection. Okay, so I'm going to try different projections. What it's doing is saying, hey, I'm a cube. Unwrap me like I'm a cube, right? If I did cube projection, then it looks like this. Kind of figures out what to do for me, right? If I just unwrap, it just goes, okay, I'm just going to unwrap however I can figure it out. Don't know. But if you specify a shape for your unwrap, it kind of tries to figure it out algorithmically for you, programmatically, right? Now, if I was going to go back into my UV editing mode, you can see now that I have my size is preserved. The size that I chose back in the day when I chose my UVs are the same as they are now. That's not changed. You can see that the ground cobble is about the same size. This is okay. It's around the same proportional size as everything else for all my walls and floors and ceilings, right? So this is my cobble texture. And if you look at the UVs, if I go back and I look at the ground cobble, this is what it looks like. Now, this is interesting. I could move this so that it sits exactly on top if I want. And that's okay because then I won't have, it'll be the same thing. So I can just go over here and press G for move. Notice I can move it anywhere I want. So I can choose where on the texture that it's going to be mapping. So it doesn't really matter, but sometimes I like to put my island exactly on the texture so I can see it. Same thing goes with this stuff. Notice that there's a lot of duplication here, like this one, and this one. There's two blue marks here, part of the original texture, and there's a blue mark over here. And if I don't want that to duplicate, I can move those pieces around so that it doesn't show the same thing. More variation on the texture. So again, if I was to go choose this one, and if I pull in the concrete texture, so here's my concrete texture, and you notice that there's the blue piece. And if I press G for move, I can move it so that maybe I don't see the blue piece anymore on that one. I can also move it so that the texture makes more sense. So you can see that I want the lines of the texture to be at the top, maybe like one of these. And then let's take a look what this one looks like on this side. So this one has the blue, but I don't want the blue to be on the top because that's that's part of the anomaly of the texture that we're using, right? Up here. So again, I can choose this one and I can show that texture. I'm just choosing this part here, going to concrete. And then again, I can press G for move, and then I can move it so I don't see that one. At least not there. And again, if I zoom in, you can see that there's, for the most part, I don't think you can see, it's not so apparent. It might be somewhere else in the texture, but I don't see it anywhere. Cool, so there's my straight piece. Again, I think this normal map is way too heavy. myself. I think it's way too pockmarked. It's got too much influence. Doesn't look realistic. In fact, it looks like it's been like scratched and stuff. It's too much. I would probably reduce this a lot when I did the normal map in the future and make it less so. Okay. So now that I've got this thing ready to go, if I go back to default, I've got this piece. It's already been kind of mapped the way I want it. I want to duplicate this piece, right? So first, I'm going to save my blend file. So yeah, definitely save over everything. And then what I want to do is maybe go into a different, let me go back into object mode. I'm going to go into a different layer, maybe whatever layer it is. So this is the first layer. This is the one I had with the tunnel, right? Yeah, there's my tunnel. I didn't lose that. Still there. But I have this straight piece, and I want to show you how easy it is to snap them together. So I'm going to kind of go into another layer. I'm going to make a duplicate of my straight piece. So here's my straight piece. So Shift D to duplicate it. See? And what I want to do is I want to click M for move and choose my other layer. So that's my layer is going to go here. There we go. So if I go to that layer now, I have this piece. And what I could do is I could, did it not go? Where's the light? Undo. No, actually, I'll just duplicate the light. Lamp, where are you, lamp? The straight lamp didn't get duplicated. I should have duplicated it. I should have done that too. But anyway, let's just do it. So I'm going to say Shift D for duplicating it. Shift D. There we go. There's the lamp. Notice there's a little line that goes there, and I'm going to click Move to the third layer, right? And if I did that, then you have two straight lamps. One of them is now, even though it's in the other layer, it's parented to this thing. Weird. So I'm going to kind of I'm going to clear the parent. That's what you can do. So you go here, and if you go to Object, you go to Parent, and you can just say Clear Parent. Alt P. And Clear Parent makes that an object again. Did it work? Oh, because it's not on the layer. So I have to be in the layer to do that. So there's the layer, Alt P for Clear Parent. There it is. Now it's outside. And then I can select this one and this one, this one and this one, and then Control P for moving it into that object again. There it is. So straight 001, straight lamp 001, and they're kind of together, right? All right, so now I want to duplicate this again. So Shift D, I got both selected. I got the lamps in here. They're both selected. And I want to place it on my, somewhere on across the Y-axis, let's just say. Here it is. And what I want to do, I want to show you how easy it is to snap together. Because I can move this thing around, notice that this one here is the bottom left corner, and so is this one. So now, I'm just going to make sure this is okay. So I'm not going to fool you. Yeah, that's what I want to see. Look, the straight lamp is inside this one again. So now if I do this, notice that everything moves numerically. So, I can move it so that it's exactly where I want it to be. I can kind of move this in place, and I can have as many straights as I want. And this is definitely one way to do it, but this is a really much easier tool to do. So I can kind of snap them together. Because why? They're exactly the same size. I can calculate their locations. One is, this will be 5, and this will be 2, -2, right? If I go -2, that's -2, right? What would it be if it's not -2? It's got to be like -1.5, right? Or -5? Oh, it's in centimeters. There you go. Here's the problem, though, eh? One thing we didn't do, if you notice here, these are okay. This got all zeroed out, but not this. The scale is still here, right? It still shows a scale of 2.5 times on the x-axis and so on. Before we export this stuff, we want to zero out the scale so that it's 1-to-1, almost like this thing was always this big, right? And the way to do that is, I believe it's Control A. And what you can do is for each one of these things, you can choose that I want to zero out rotation and scale. And if you notice on the right, take a look at over here when I do that, Control A. If I go rotation and scale, it becomes 1. So the information about how big it is or to scale it back down, gone. And you want to zero it out for this as well as rigging your organic character and so on. Same thing with this one. So I want to choose this one and I want to change it back. Control A, and I want to clear my rotation and scale. And I might as well do it on the other layer just so I don't forget. So I want to go here and Control A and reset the location, the rotation and scale. But going back, the reason why I kept this layer here is because this is my piece, and I can take this, duplicate it a bunch of times by copying, shifting D and putting it in there, and then I can always have my original pieces. So this is my straight layer. This is my tunnel layer. This is my new level that I'm creating layer, right? So this is cool, and I have noticed each piece has a little lamp inside there. So when I export this piece into Unity, right, it looks like it is tileable, right? Let's do it. Let's just export this piece into Unity. So I'm going to kind of, not the 2, but the 1. So I'm going to get rid of this. In fact, I'll go into the other layer here and just export this one. So how do I do that? I don't want to export the whole blend file. Well, I can just take this and this, the lamp. I want to get the lamp in there too this time around because I want to take the lamp into Unity too, right? So just this and this. Those are the 2 pieces. And what I can do is I can go File, Export, and then I want to export this time as an FBX. Let's see the difference. So FBX. In this case, I want to go to my desktop, and I want to call this tunnel, and I'll put underneath that straight, right? And go into FBX. Now look on the left. There's some additional information for you. One is there is main. There's also an armature, an animation, and it says one thing in here which is really important called selected objects. If I don't select this, it takes everything from my blend file and exports it into one big file. So imagine if you made a big robot and you had different pieces of the robot across different layers, but all you want is the head. And if I just export this way, I get all the different layers smashed together into one place, right? The head, the body, the blah, blah. I don't want that. So it's kind of like this. I only want my straight piece, not the entire robot, okay? So I want to click on this little selected objects thing. Okay, apply scale, all local. Forward is the Z forward, and up is Y up because it's for Unity. Okay, this is all good. And I'm going to save this thing to my desktop. Great, fantastic. Let's see what that looks like when I bring it back into Unity. So I'm going to go back into Unity. I'm going to open up the same project again. And when I open up the same project, I want to import that one piece back into Unity again, right? And see what I get when I get that straight and what different kinds of controls I have, right? Compared to the tunnel. The tunnel was a mistake, right? Because the tunnel we thought about making a tunnel. And maybe you might have thought of this before somewhere else as well. But it's better to have these little tiles that you can do instead. All right, so how do I do this? I want to import a new piece. Remember, we did the same thing. We just dragged and dropped it. Can we do the same thing again with my my new tunnel.fbx? Where is it, first of all? That's the thing. That's one of the things you have to do is find the bloody thing on your thing. Or you can also use the Unity tools to just import like with your file manager, as opposed to what I'm doing, which is trying to find it here on my messy desktop and try and drag and drop it. One thing to note is whenever you make an FBX, it has a different symbol for it. So that might make it somewhat easier to get through in my messy desktop, but I'm going to be a little bit lazy because it looks like a Maya. It looks kind of like this Maya stuff. If I put it in the right place, here it is. And just drag and drop it. I want to put it inside my models folder. So here's my tunnel straight. I'm just going to drag and drop it in there. And that's all you have to do. So if I did that, here's my tunnel straight. Let me bring it into the game. And it brings it into this space right here. Now, one thing to note is before, let's take this tunnel out of here now. So we'll just remove this tunnel. And we'll put in just tunnel straight. So this is what tunnel straight looks like. What do we do wrong? Yeah, the normals are all messed. How do I fix that? If I got something from my tunnel straight, is there something I can do in the inspector to fix it? And if you notice on the right, I can generate my colliders. is there somewhere where I can flip the normals? So import lights, swap UVs, generate light maps, normals. I can recalculate the normals if I want, right? And apply. I can do that kind of thing. Not really going to help us. The reason why we don't see anything inside is because the normals are all in the wrong space. So let's just get rid of that and do it again. And re-export. It's the best way to do it. So we'll just delete it. Go back and delete this prefab because that's going to mess us up. But I want you to notice something. There's something that's different about this one when we import it as an FBX compared to what we did with things. So one thing is we need to flip the normals. It appeared here. They actually showed, but it shows up on both sides anyway, right? So what I want to do here is go into my object, and I want to go into normals. And you have to do this inside of the in edit mode. So here's my object. I got to go into edit mode and select everything and go into mesh, normals, flip normals. Now nothing apparently happens here, but it has an effect because, you know, of the way it works. Okay, so if I go back, let's go. The what? Oh no, I don't. That's just for us. I don't have to do that. It does it automatically in Unity. Okay. Yeah, so I've got this part as an example, and we're good. And what I want to do is just save it again. So again, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab the stuff that's inside my scene, and this is important to do properly. So again, I'm going to go grab my straight, this part, and the straight lamp. I want to kind of suggest those two pieces, and then I'm going to go into File, Export for FBX, and like it says before, I'm not going to change this tunnel. I'm going to keep everything the same. It says camera, lamp, armature, blah, 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 but only the selected objects that I've selected. That's all I want. And then click Export. All right, now let's try that again. So here's my tunnel straight, just so we know where it is. And I want to pull it back into Unity by doing this. And then grab that and put it into the scene. There it is. And now we have that other weird effect again. Remember we colored Blender with those things? One thing to note is in my tunnel straight, again, I have this stuff here that I have, right? So remember that I can generate things like, and I want to do this. I want to generate a collider, 100%. Want to do this for sure. Cameras and lights, I definitely want. If there's any cameras and lights, swap UVs I don't want. Generate light UV maps, I definitely want those. That's going to help me with different UVs and the way it looks. So I want to definitely calculate those. Use file scale. That's important, right? Scale factor is 1, right? If there's a rig or an animation, I can bring that into. And any materials that I'm bringing in for ground and walls, I'm bringing those two things in. I can also choose that instead of using embedded materials, I can extract the materials, right? So I can extract the materials out. So here's my imported materials, right? And it says extract materials and extract textures if I want them, right? So that's one thing. And I'm going to apply everything. We go back to my model and make sure that all these are correct and click apply. Okay, cool. So now inside of my materials tab, I have ground and walls. That's what the same material that it was called. That's why I have this stuff. It looks like it's been textured. But one of the things I still haven't done is inside of this particular one for my tunnel straight, here's ground and walls. Notice that it's ground and walls, the ground and walls, but I have this green color in here again. How come? I turned it off, right? Like, how come it's like, looks like this? It's looking like on the top left corner. Look, I can't even affect this one. It doesn't do anything to this one over here at all. So where is that material coming from? Right? Think about it. Here's my ground. Here's my walls. These are different things that I've got, right? But now when my tunnel's straight, I got this ground and this wall. Can I change it? So what if I took this ground here and put that in there? Can I change my tunnel? I got my straight lamp in there too, by the way. Here's my lamp. Look, it's a point lamp. That's already in there as well. This is kind of cool. It appears in the top left corner, which is where I want it. And I have a player. Here's my player. Object is right there. I can recenter this thing. So my tunnel straight is at 0, 0, 0. My player is somewhere else, right? But how the heck do I get rid of this? So going back to my prefab, this is where I'm just going to be honest. That's where I like the .blend file a little bit more. I have more control than I do with an FBX. And honestly, I have to be honest and tell you that I'm not sure why it's like that. I'm not going to tell you that I know, because it's really bizarre. So here's my tunnel, and here's my tunnel straight. In my models, I have this tunnel straight. In my tunnel straight, I got all this stuff: ground, walls, and straight, right? And notice it's not something that I can touch, right? I don't have access to this, right? I have my tunnel straight, but I don't have access to this part. Okay. Now, if I go back to materials, it says use embedded materials. If I say extract materials, it's going to ask me where I want them to extract them. So let's put them back into the materials tab. And it takes them away from here, from inside the prefab. This is good. I don't want my materials to be part of my prefab. That would be bad. Well, the answer is it depends what you're doing. But in my case, I don't care. I don't want them here. Now I got a couple of copies here, right? I've got my ground and my walls, and it says ground 1, walls 2. I can tell that these ones are mine because they're colored. And they're named the same things because of the way I kept everything. Now, if I was to delete the other ones, right, then when I brought back my tunnel, the other original tunnel thing, it would be like purple. And I'll show you that in a bit. Actually, I'll just do that so you can see what I'm talking about. So here's ground 1 and ground 2. Let's get rid of the other ones. So all I care about is this one. So I'll get rid of this one. And I'll get rid of this one. And I'll get rid of this one. Okay, now I have ground and walls. But I want them to be not colored the way they are right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to get rid of these things like I did before, change the opacity down to 0 so I don't see that. Same thing with the walls. I'm going to just recolor those things so that there's no extra colors in there whatsoever. And I've got those now. So I've got this tunnel straight with a lamp, and I've got the good looking thing happening, right? It looks pretty good. Let's bring my player into the object just so we can see what it looks like. Right, we'll bring them into here like this. It's sized correctly. These are all good things. I did that all from the beginning, right? Layer. This is good. But what about if I bring my old prefab back? If I took my tunnel prefab and brought them back in, it'd be like this. So whenever you don't have any information for materials, it gives you this purple mess, right? So what I could do if I really want to fix that is I could add 2 materials back in there because I already have the materials. So I could just go material, as an example for the tunnel, the tunnel material itself, I could just go ground. So this is for my walls, my floor, I can do that. And my walls, right? I can do walls, and this one is also floor, right? So this is my ground for this part, and we're good. It's pretty cool. Like I'm telling you, like Unity is a great game engine in terms of how easy it is to do stuff. Now, my tunnel doesn't make any sense anymore, but one thing I've done is I updated it so I can just apply the changes to my prefab, and now it's no problem anymore. Every time I pull it in, it'll be fixed. Now let's go back to that other piece. Remember I told you that what I want to do is this tunnel straight. So if I want to go into my prefabs, I want to pull this one into my prefabs folder so I can make as many of them as I want. Right? My tunnel straight includes a lamp. So every time I make a tunnel straight, I'm going to make a lamp too. So it's going to give me all the lamps I want. All right, so let's do that. So let's copy my tunnel. So here's my tunnel over and over again. So I want to tile my object. So I'm going to press, again, Control D in Unity to make another tunnel, right? And what I want to do is I want to select my tunnel straight, right? Here's my tunnel straight. And I want to snap these two together. So I can, now it's easy. I can just go to the bottom right, the bottom left corner here, press V for vertex snapping, and pull it together. And notice that my positioning is perfect. Same thing for the first one, right? So I can make as many of these as I want. So I can Control D, right? And I can pull it out and press V and snap it together by dragging it in there, right? Control D. I'm just making them one at a time. There's other ways of doing it even faster, and you can do it programmatically, where I can make the tunnels appear exactly in the same space. If I know how big the tunnels are, I can literally plot them in place using a script, right? If I want to. But yeah, I want to do the same thing here. I want to press, V for snapping, and then just snap it in, and so that it's all perfect. Now let's run the game and see if we've done everything properly. Right. So here I am. I'm in my tunnel. And now take a look. I have these lights in the scene that I put in because these are all part of the tunnel. Now there's a bit of problem here. Do you see the problem? This. There's kind of like a seam, if you will, right? Because of the UV maps, or so the normal maps. I mean, it's somewhat noticeable to me because I don't like the way it looks, and it's too granular, right? But for you guys, you may not notice it if it's a large enough thing, right? Let me just turn that sound down a little bit. Sounds too loud now. A funny room. All right. So again, I can walk, right? And you can see that I've got fairly good functionality in the tunnels. It looks like a level. I've got collisions everywhere. I can jump up and down, right? I'm probably a little bit too tall for this thing still. This tunnel doesn't give me a lot of height for me to jump. I kind of hit the ceiling with my head. And if I fall off the map, then I just fall into oblivion, right? Because there's no collider and there's no depth plane or anything like that to catch me. But you can see that I've just duplicated these little pieces. This isn't exactly what I want. I want you guys to get even more granular than this. Because now I only have a floor and walls and a ceiling. It's much better for us to have wall and floor only, ceiling and wall only, so I can kind of push things together to make my own scene the way I want, with doors and floors and stuff and whatever. Now, I think I only asked you for like 4 different tiles or 5 different tiles. You can make as many as you want, and I want you to make your own interactive 3D level, right? Where you can kind of have your tiles all throughout the entire level, and you're just duplicating the same objects over and over again instead of, making your, kind of creating new assets. Any questions so far? I know I've covered a lot of stuff again today, but you see what I've done here with the tile. One thing is it snaps perfectly in place. This is the key, all right? Because otherwise, if it's not, like that other tunnel snapping here, it would be almost impossible. It would just be too difficult. I would want to make another curved piece that's perfectly aligned, right? If I want to make a curved tunnel, I'd make a curved piece, right? Okay, let's go back to the Blender for a second. So I'm going to save this scene. I'm going to go back to Blender. And I've got this piece here. Well, what if I want to make another kind of piece? I wanted to make a piece. Let's just get rid of this. We have to change the normals here. What if I wanted to make a piece that is a T, right? So it goes to the right and left now. How do I do that? Well, I'm kind of almost there, right? I mean, if you think about it. So one is, I want to definitely select these 2 pieces here. Actually, I'll do this piece first. I'll go into edit mode and definitely recalculate the normals on the inside. That'll be messed up. So I'm going to kind of go to normals, flip normals. And do the same thing for this one. Right? So I'll say mesh normals, flip normals. Okay? If that makes sense. So I've got these things set up. So I've got kind of a longer-ish tunnel. And now what I want to do is on the top here somewhere, I want to create a split, some kind of T. What do you recommend? Well, one is I could do Shift D, and I want to move this out over here, right? Again, across the x-axis, a certain amount. And if you notice, it's probably going to be something like 10. So I'll put 10 in there. Not 15, 10. 10. Okay. I don't know why it's taking 15, but we'll just make it 10. So that's one thing. And I want to rotate it across the z-axis 90 degrees. So rotate across the z-axis 90 degrees. Remember that little thing we made? That makes it possible for us to do that. So I've got this rotation. Now, what I want to do, remember when we rotate? I want to clear that rotation, baby. Because if I don't clear this rotation, it's going to look like it's always rotated. I want it to be here forever. Also, we're going to have to recalculate where this whole thing is going to be. We're also going to make this one piece as opposed to multiple pieces, right? Because I wanted to kind of stamp this piece in the next as another area, right? And maybe also we want to also consider that, I don't know why I made it so long, but I mean, you can make it shorter, okay? So I want to do the same thing. I want to kind of take this piece here, but I want to duplicate this one and bring it here and then flip it the other way, okay? So again, it's Shift D. I want to move it across the x-axis so that it's 10 feet this way. Right? And then I want to rotate it. Okay, now this is interesting. I can rotate it, but because my corner is right here, it's going to rotate this way. And if I rotate this way, it's going to be down in here somewhere. And that's no good, right? So what I could do is I could change the location of my rotation if I want. But for now, let's just rotate it the way it is. So rotate across the z-axis. And again, it's -90. And I want to move it this way up the y-axis this way, right? So here's my up here. Notice that the numbers, I mean, it's going to be something like 15. Okay. And why would that be weird? Why would that be like kind of a weird number? Because just like this one is 10, and this one is off because of the rotation. Sorry, this one is off because of the rotation. So it's kind of like 12.9 or 13 or something like that. Why is that? Because where the place of rotation is, my center point of rotation, right? That's the problem that I have here. So this is one way of doing it. Maybe what we want to do instead is I want to move this one. So copy this one. So Shift D, I already have the location, and I just move it across this way, across the y-axis. And just to see what it is, it looks like 10, and this looks like probably like 15, -8. How big is that? Sure. So I'll put that back down there and make it -8. What other things can I do? Can you guys think of anything else that I can, another way of doing this, that I can make this without using, I want to be as lazy as possible. What's another way to do this? I've got the tunnel happening. I want to connect these pieces here. What do I do? And do I want to make this one piece? How do I do that in edit mode? I could. Is that going to screw up my UVs? What do you think? I will.
I think you want to meet it in the center.
I want to make it in the center, but how do I meet it in the center? How do I mean, I could create another piece. This is what I was telling you guys about, remember? I could, but then I'm going to cut a door. Is that what you want me to do? Jesus, man. You're killing me. I could move them. I mean, everything is possible, right? But I want to do it numerically. I don't want to do it by eye. Okay, that's the one thing I don't want to do. I could do this. Okay, because I mean, there's also snapping tools in Blender that I could use. My chief worry is when I come in here and see this corner right here that we just moved by eye. I don't like it. And also, they're not connected in any way. Like, there's literally no connection. Like, there's the vertices are just like duplicate. We'll have Z fighting. The vertices are going to be on top of each other. So there's a case for us to take this into one object. And the way to do that is to join them all. So again, I want to get this one and maybe these two, and they're going to join to the last object. So this one, this one, this one, and this one. I want to join them all here to this one. Now, Control J, but there's a problem with it. Where do all the lights go? Right? That's an issue. All right, now the one thing that we preserved was the UV map somehow, right? That was neat. If I go into edit mode, now I can select all these objects, which is good. And the really good thing is where these vertices connect, right? I have a vert here. I'm going to take this back into normal like solid mode so you can see it a little easier, okay? So I have this vert right here, and I have this vert down here, right? Down here. And this whole edge is shared, right? And I have these two edges, these two faces, and then who knows if this is even touching. I can't tell. It looks like it is, but hey, it was done by eye. I moved it by eye. Oh, it's easy to see that. Look, if I take a vertex, if I go Control Tab and go into vertex select mode and select this vert and move this over here, you can see that there's there's nothing. It's not connected at all. Why? Because I just put them together, right? So what I want to do is I want to take these vertices down in here, right? And I want to select all and then go to the left, and I want to remove doubles, right? So remove doubles. And it says removed 8 verts. Now when I go back and deselect all and go to this vert again, guess what? Now it's all connected into one, right? Guys, this is key stuff, because if you don't do this, then these verts and these walls are disconnected completely, and that would be very bad. What about here? How about here? Is there a vert that's connected here? Like, do I connect? Is there connected? Yeah, it's all connected, right? I just have different separations, different pieces, piece parts. I want to keep those piece parts, by the way. Let's see. Let's see what happens, right? What happens with the UV map? We're still okay. Yeah, I know, it's magic. Exactly what we just said, magic. One of the things is we're missing our lamps. Our lamps are all messed up here. This one and this one, they just disappeared. I need a spacer, guys. And what's the fastest way to create a floor plane? Do you guys know? Select 4 verts and press F. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to go vert, 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 and F. And then, hey, what the hell? Where does this UV map come from? How the heck did this happen? Right? All right, so I like that. I like the idea of that, but I'm not really too trusting. Also, this is weird. Look at this. This is kind of like, it flipped them all. It's almost like a thing. It tried to figure out what I wanted to do. Remember, because I got some unwrapped stuff going on, right? And, you know, I want to do the same thing for here. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and flip. That's really weird. It's weird, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, and F. And I've got my thing, my tunnel. Look at that, right? Low poly, right? How many edges do I have here? I mean, how many, stuff? I don't have a lot. Like, it literally is just flat planes. That's all it is, right? But it looks way more complex because of the normal maps, because of my images, and that's how we make low poly objects. Like I said, we use images, textures, and normals to make them more, look a little bit more curved, plus ambient occlusion, plus different kinds of other post-processing effects to make it all look awesome. Okay, cool. So I've got one object now, not enough lights. I've got this light here, and notice I can't access it because it's only in object mode. Here I'm in edit mode, and I've got this thing called straight 0001, right? Let's go back into edit object mode. So here I'm in object mode, and I've got this light, and this light, which is straight lamp. Notice it came out. I got this straight lamp here, and this whole object here is called straight 001. It's not really straight. Let's call it T. Right? So we'll call this T. That's what it is. It's like a T, right? And inside we have a lamp. We'll call this the T lamp. T lamp 1. There's T lamp 1. And do we have any other lamps? I have this straight lamp. Let's go to that. Where is that? It's here. I want this to parent into my T. So I'm going to press this one, and then this one. And then I want to change the parent. So I'm going to call object parent, right? Object, or Control P. There we go. So now this is inside of here. This is going to be T lamp 2. T lamp 2, right? And I want some additional lamps, right? Like, this isn't enough for me, right? This, I want a couple of more lamps in here. So let's walk through the scene again. And what I want is I want to take this T lamp 2 and I want to shift D it, right? Shift D. It's still, notice it's still in here. Let's put it back. Or is it? Here it is. It's still parented to this one. And let's just pull this further down, somewhere down here, maybe. Or we put it inside the corner so we have some lights. I meant to grab this one. Okay, there we are. So we're inside this tunnel. And like so. Okay, so now this is weird. Look at these. This concrete block doesn't look right. Look how it kind of corrected differently than the others. Right? It kind of looks like a round thing here. It's kind of interesting, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. But anyways, let's just do this. Let's put another lamp. So Shift D for the lamp. And let's move this lamp over here, across the x-axis, then across the y-axis here. So we'll put it over here. So there's the lamp. It's all parented to the same thing. That's enough. Cool. We got this T. Looks pretty good. And let's move out to this. Let's just take care of the UVs. I'm a little nervous when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go to UV editing mode. And what I want is these UVs in here, the ones that I added in. So let's just hide some of the other materials that I don't care about right now. So I'm going to click this one, go back into edit mode, click. Well, actually, this is interesting. What it's done. Look what it's done here for these ones, right? Looks cool, but not really cool, right? Yeah, it's weird, right? It's not right at all. So let's go back into object mode and then press edit mode. And then, okay, so how come, right? I want to kind of control F for faces. Let's go here. Let's make these ones just hide for now, because all I care about is, and maybe just hide this one here, this one, and we'll hide this one, and we'll also hide this one, and maybe even hide that one, just so we can see what it looks like in here. Because you know what? You want to kind of have control over what's happening. So let's do this one first. This one unwrapped okay. Like this one seems to be okay, but however, I'm going to unwrap it again. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say unwrap, unwrap. Okay, so it kind of unwraps that one on its own. Now here's the problem when I did that. Take a look what happened. It didn't tile properly. Yeah? It didn't tile properly. Let's undo that change. So we'll undo, put it back. So it kind of worked, but not, right? And the other thing we can do is we can try and unwrap them all again. That might be something to do, because you know what? That way we'll have a flow, right? Right now we don't have a flow at all, right? And that's a big issue. So I want to kind of, select all these floor tiles here and then press unwrap and then unwrap. And now they're really weird, and that's an issue as well. That's a problem, right? Because now they're non-proportional. Now I know how big they're supposed to be. Don't worry, we're not going to be in that. We're not much trouble. We're in trouble. We're not much trouble. So the way to do that, of course, is you can see that this tile here is the size that we want, which should be about this tile here. So if I go to scale, and if I go to go, and I scale this out again. Hold on a second here.
It would be easier to just cut the window.
Yeah, no, don't do it. Don't do that, man. You're gonna have problems. Don't do that. No. Yeah, but that's how it goes. Listen, there's no shortcuts here. There's no real shortcuts. There's shortcuts, but you might get yourself into trouble, right? Which is not really what we want, right? We want you to not waste a lot of time here, because what's going to happen is even this work that I'm doing here is like we could have planned things differently, right? Because otherwise what's going to happen is we're going to get two tiles that connect to each other. Remember, we're going to have these tiles. We're going to make it tile maps, right? So the tiles that are going to connect to each other are not going to really connect. Okay, that's kind of as close as we can get. We messed up though. It's not totally a problem, but it's not a great solution either to do what I'm doing. And you'll see that later when we connect the T to the other thing, to the straight. No, do you understand what I'm saying? There's a problem here, right? All right, but this looks better now, because now we don't have that weird, separation that we had before, right? So it looks like there's a flow, which is what cobblestone should look like, not cut, which is what it kind of looked like before. And we're gonna have to do the same thing for this part. At least for this part. Don't care about this part so much, but definitely for this part we want, because it's kind of look like something. This looks like it's mirrored. That's what's happening here, right? So again, if I select this one, and this one, you can see that there's a problem. And let's go back into concrete. And I can zoom in. And if I press unwrap, we're going to have a problem like this because it's too weird. But now we're just going to scale this up again until it's about right here. And we can also go across the x-axis, because it'll go across the x-axis, sorry, y-axis, I mean, so that it is exactly perfect, or as perfect as you're going to get. There we go. So that looks like it's one piece now, right? And then we have the problem with the ceiling. The ceiling tile is weird. We got this weird thing. We couldn't leave it there like this, Philip. Look, this is just too weird, right? So that's no good. So what we want to do is we've got to decide which ceiling tile it's going to connect to, or if it's going to be all of them. I think it's better to be all of them. So let's press Alt-H to get everything back, right? And then we'll get rid of the floor tiles altogether. So we'll just select all the floor tiles, right? And then just hide those. And then go into the ceiling tiles and then fix all those up. So we're going to do one of these. And then make sure we get this one too. And then so we get all the ceiling tiles there, and we're going to do an unwrap. But now we got this situation, and again, we'll just make it so that it is the right size. What's going on here? Why is that all skewed?
Maybe because you moved the bird.
Probably. Don't worry about it. No, we can't think about those things anymore. Yeah, but you're right. I probably fooled around with the vertex. Who knows what I made? I made some kind of thing. No time now. Across the x-axis until it does. Otherwise, no, you're right. Because if we don't, well, the problem is it's right here. This is the problem. See this thing here. Somehow it got skewed for some reason. It looks okay. Like you're not going to see a problem anyway, but you want to make them as flat as possible. That's the key with thing. It's not that skewed anyway, and it's so big that you won't notice, right? But and I'm just being, if you want to be perfect, we made mistakes. Okay, so just letting you know. Okay, I made mistakes. And then again, I'll say Alt-H to go back. You can see now that it's not so bad. You can see that there's a continuation both sides, both ways, which is what makes things look more realistic. Okay, so I think I'm pretty good to go with this little thing here that I've got. Let's go back into default mode, and we'll finish off with this one. But I want to export this part out now. Now, one thing we also did not do, all right, is we did not set our origin. Okay, so let's go back and go to object mode. All right, I want to, my whole object is selected. Curious, what would you do? No, but what would you do? Would you want to keep the origin here, or do you want to do something crazy and move it somewhere else? I mean, some people have different concepts about this. It depends on, the answer is, it depends on how you're going to snap, right? If I'm snapping here most of the time, then this is okay. My challenge is if I'm snapping on this side, then I'm not okay anymore, right? What about when I do tiles going this way and tiles going that way? That's going to be a challenge, right? That's kind of weird. Some people make more than one of these. A T that's this way, a T that's this way, a T that's this way, and they all snap properly into that particular thing. So it makes it easier for them. It's just a copy of the thing, but just rotated. Right T, left T, top T, upside down T, whatever. Okay, let's make it interesting. Okay, this is not good enough for me. I'm gonna make it really interesting for you guys to make you guys crazy, right? I want to make it so it's a T that goes up. Okay, yeah, man, let's do it, right? So I want to skew this thing a little bit. All right. I told you I'm not satisfied with this stuff. I want to make it so it's a slope. All right. So first of all, we need to model it, right? So if we're going to model this thing, what I want to do is I want to move this part. I want to keep this part, these two vertices and edges the same, right? This part, but I want to move everything else. I want to move all this up as an example, right? So what I want to do here is I want to take, if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to move everything else up, I want to undo or uncheck these edges. So I'm going to say this edge, and this edge these four edges are the ones that I don't want to move, right? But I want to select everything else. So select all, but deselect. So control click these edges, right? So I want to deselect these edges. That's what I want to do, right? So I don't want to select these edges here. These edges here are the ones I don't want, right? The rest of the edges I want. And also, if I want to move these ones, right? If I move this one now, like watch what happens when I move it now. So this is okay, right? Because I'm not selecting all the edges. But what if I deselect this edge and this edge and this edge and this edge? What can I do that? Well, yeah, it's going to do one of these, right? Which is kind of what I want. I want to do this, right? So it kind of goes up, but I want to make it so that it makes sense. Can't be so much. Like if it's too much more than this, it's not going to work. That connected. That's ready to go. I want to do it that way. If I made it this way though, like something weird, like I don't know, like tilted everything, I don't recommend that. That's like if you did this, then you'll be on a corner when you're walking, right? So kind of like this, right? I could do the same thing with this one too. Now I could deselect all these edges and then move this up a little bit to make it more of a slope, or move it back down again. Like a good example of this would be if I wanted to do something weird where I don't want to select these edges anymore. So let's say deselect all these edges. So, and now all I'm moving is, make sure that's not selected. And all I'm moving is this thing. So if, let's say, for example, I wanted to do one of these, then I could kind of make it so that it's a bump that goes up and then it goes back down again, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's coplanar or not. So even if I went to a really weird way down here like this, I could do that. The challenge is the UVs, man. The UVs. Don't you care about the UVs? Right? That's what I was always told. Don't do that. Don't do. You're going to screw the UVs. You have to kind of do this again. Wrong. It looks wrong. That's what it looks like because all the cobblestones are all messed up, right? Because they look stretched, right? So yeah, you could totally do stuff like this, make your level, but I recommend, I'm going to put it back the way it was. I recommend not to do it this way. All right. If you're going to do what I'm just doing, make more divisions, more geometry, make your level that way first, then do the UVs properly, and then export. There's no quick way to do this without making it look like messed completely. Okay.
Is there a way where you're like, when the UV map, you do more shifting?
Yeah.
Like that, like,
don't do it, man. No, man.
It's like an angle, like 30, 35.
Don't do it, is what I'm telling you. Don't do it at all. One thing to note is this has a problem, right? One of the problems it has is it's 13 by 13 by 3. That's a weird number, 13 meters, right? 13 wide, because of the shape of that I put together, right? 13 by 13 by 3, because it's like 5 and another 3, 5 on both sides, and it's messed up. And we didn't really calculate it properly at all. So this is all good. Inside here, though, you can see that there is the median. It tells me what the median is because all these pieces are together. Just letting you know. All right, so let's export this piece finally and get it done. So we have everything selected. One key thing is that everything, including the lamps that you want, are all selected so that you can export it. Okay? That's the one key thing. And all the normals are correct. Did we flip the normals on the floors? The new faces, did we flip the normals on the floors? No, we did not. Let's go back in there and flip those normals. And the way to test this is back face culling. If you go back face culling and you go down here and you can see a face in there, right? Like, that's messed up, guys. Look at this. Look, that's wrong. Everything is wrong. So we went in there. We would be only the outside, but not the inside. You see that? How the whole thing is wrong? Whole thing is wrong. So if we select all, and I go to mesh normals, recalculate or flip normals first of all, so that they're inside, not outside. That is important to do, right? Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. So guys, please remember to do that all the time, right? Otherwise, you're going to go into Unity and you're going to be like, What's wrong? Why is it looking like? Because the normals are pointing the wrong way. All right, so let's go back out to edit mode. We'll take backface calling off. Backface calling is a great feature to show us where the normals are too, right? It's not really for that. I want to save this thing or export it. So I'm going to say file, right? Export. I'm going to say FBX. And this time, I'm not going to call it tunnel straight. I'm going to say tunnel T. So it's going to be called tunnel T.fbx. And then we're going to save it as that. And this time, we're going to go back into Unity, and we're going to import that. Let's do it through the menu this time. So we're going to go to Assets, right? Import new asset. I'm going to go to the desktop. Right, so here's my desktop. And then I'm going to see all the assets on the desktop, and one of them is going to be this tunnel T asset, FBX. Import. And there it is, tunnel T. Right? Now it's in the wrong place. It should be inside models. This is not a prefab. And if you look at the thing, there's a bunch of lights. This is all good. I got a couple ones I didn't name properly, because you know how it is, right? And I've got these ground and walls things that are all colored wrong. So one thing I want to do is go back in here and go into my model and definitely click on generate colliders. I want to definitely click on light maps. And then what I want to do is apply that change, go into materials, and where it says extract materials, extract those materials. Come on in. Put them inside the materials tab, select folder. And now that they're extracted, I don't need them, right? But it's okay. I go to materials, I have walls and ground. I already have walls 1 and ground 1. These are the materials I can use, right? I'm going to get rid of these walls 1 and ground 1. Just bear with me while I do that. So get rid of that. And get rid of this. And what I could do instead is when I look at my models and I go back to my tunnel, you see that it looks like this. And there's ground and walls. I can just go into my materials, and I can say ground is ground, walls is walls. So I only have one set of materials. I don't have to have 2 sets of materials, right? This way. If I click apply, then we're going to have the materials applied properly, nice and easy. And if I take my my model, which is my tunnel T, and bring it in now, and I can bring it back into the fold here, and I can also go into my prefabs and drag and drop my tunnel T in my prefabs. There it is. If I was to snap it together, again, I can use vertex snapping. So I go in my tunnel T, click V for vertex on the left, and then just snap it in place. Notice it's exactly perfect -20 with a rotation of -89.98, which is close, but not perfect. Let's leave it alone. I made a mistake somewhere. Otherwise, it'd be perfect, right? All right, let's try the game out and see if it works. How about that? And see if there's a problem with any of this stuff. So we're in here, and then we go through, and then, oh, okay, this is our first problem. Take a look. Remember we modified the things? See that problem? Yeah, because it looks something's weird, right? There needs a transition or something, right? And then we're going to go through here. This looks okay, and we see the light sources are all in the right places and everything else. You know, to create this light, there's no light down here, but we have light inside the character, and so for the most part, it looks okay, except for this part. And this part's no good because of what we did, right? Because we had to reset the UVs and all those kind of stuff. So we kind of joined things together. All right, so and then again, going back to this, the reason why this is no good, because we've done the whole cube, and this is where you're going to have to work differently than me, is you want to separate the floor and the walls so that they're separate. Wall, floor combinations. And what you could do is the floor plane, might be better, is to make a massive floor plane where all your walls sit on top of, right? So that they share one big cobblestone. Doesn't matter, right? So you have some place where things sit on top of, and then it becomes easier. All right, challenge for you guys for next time. I want you to make your own little tunnels and everything else make your own ways. Make a little level in Unity with your own tunnels. Make some stuff. It's going to help you start doing your UV, your project. I want to see some progress on your project for next week. Okay. So next week, I'm not going to give you a Dropbox for this. Or a discussion. I just want to see the progress of your stuff. I want to go around. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make a Dropbox, a discussion board, say assignment 2 progress, and just show me what you got so far for next week. Okay. And that's it for me, guys. I think there's a lot here to do. Lots of learnings. Please don't hesitate, because the more you wait for your assignment 2, the more difficult. This takes a long time. As you can see, it took me 4 hours to do everything here. And, I went slow, but, there's mistakes that were made, and correcting your mistakes and going through that whole process takes hours and hours of work. So don't.
Use Unity for,
yes.
demo?
Yeah. Please use Unity, so everyone's the same.
5 reusable tiles, like
5. Yeah. So you make them whatever you, so make your level the way you want it to look. So 5 reusable tiles for you to do whatever you want to do. Different corners or whatever you want. Something, you be creative. This is your game. This is going to be your level that you're making.
There's no specs on the tile, right?
No, I don't want to give you specs. Once I start giving you specs, then I limit.
Having them,
Yeah.
combined together.
They have to combine, but I don't want to give you too many specs, because otherwise what's going to happen is I'm going to limit your creativity. I don't want to do that. Okay. All right. That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.